Chapter 2164. The craze on the internet really came without warning. It was extremely turbulent. Soon, some people started to pair up. I'm willing to be the Huagu couple for 100 years. Previous poster, wake up. It's been at least 200 years. Look at the angle of Major General Hua's seat. Isn't it 45 degrees facing Chief Gu's seat? *CK. The eyes of the people above are too crafty. It was really 45 degrees. Don't ask me how I know. The most beautiful angle on a human face is 45 degrees. That's why Major General Hua is constantly flirting with Chief Gu. Lu Yuan and Lu Jin did not attend the meeting. Instead, they sat at home and watched the live broadcast on TV. At the same time, Lu Jin was also browsing the internet with his phone. Of course, it was also to prevent someone from causing trouble online so that he could fight back immediately. Today was his daughter and son-in-law's first public display of affection. He would not allow anyone to ruin this natural sweetness. Lu Yuan glanced at his phone and shook his head speechlessly. He said, "These netizens are too imaginative. The position of the seat is fixed. How could it be at a 45-degree angle? What do you know?" Lu Jin moved aside disdainfully and didn't want to sit with Lu Yuan. "You're a straight man. You don't understand the fun of being a fan." Lu Yuan. "What do you mean by fans being picky?" Lu Jin chuckled and secretly used Gu Nianji's official Weibo account to post a sweet daily photo of Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng. It was immediately discovered. Netizens quickly swarmed over and left comments and likes under that Weibo post, looking like they were celebrating the festival in high spirits. "Official candy is the deadliest. Chief Gu, Major General Hua, you must live forever. Major General Hua, you must treat Chief Gu well. Otherwise we CP fans will not let you off the hook." However, most of Gu Nianji's fans were cute little girls like her. Even when they threatened people, they were still soft. The threat of "I won't let you go" was accompanied by a picture of a kitten saying, "I'm super fierce." It immediately lost all its momentum. Lu Jin was so happy that he didn't even bother to watch the interrogation on TV. Lu Yuan coughed and said, "The interrogation has begun. Aren't you going to watch?" Lu Jin raised one eyelid and glanced at the television. Hua Xiaoheng was the one being questioned. He had already moved his gaze away from Gu Nianji's face and was looking at the senator who was asking him questions. "Senator A, Major General Hua, you are the commander of the Special Operations Forces. May I ask you, why are you operating within the country?" Gu Nianji, where the hell did this idiot councilman come from? How could he ask such a question in public? In the past 2 years, Hua Xiaoheng had gone from being in the dark to being in the open. Therefore, it was fine to say that he was the commander of the Special Operations Forces. If it was 2 years ago, this statement alone would have gotten the senator arrested and charged with serious leaking of secrets. However, he still had to ask, why do we have to act within the country? What an idiot. Therefore, before Hua Xiaoheng could answer the question, Gu Nianji replied calmly, "Mr. Senator, this question is beyond the scope of your authority." Although Senator A was unwilling, he still didn't dare to openly go against Gu Nianji, the favorite of Speaker Long of the Senate. He had no choice but to change the topic and ask, "Major General Hua, did the Special Operations Forces under your jurisdiction participate in the hunt for American citizen Kevin more than 3 months ago?" Hua Xiaoheng nodded and said calmly, "Yes, on Christmas Eve last year, our agency received a request for help and authorization to participate in the hunt for Kevin according to the law. But we all know that the Special Operations Forces can't act within the country. Why did your subordinates participate in the domestic operation?" Senator A's aura suddenly became arrogant. Hua Xiaoheng glanced at him indifferently. No comment. Senator A jumped up with a ha and said loudly with his fat belly, "Who asked you for help? Who gave you the authorization?" "As far as I know, the Senate didn't give you the authorization." Gu Nianji wished she had a gavel in her hand so that she could hit Senator A's wooden head. She raised her voice and said loudly, "The Senate did authorize it. It was personally signed by Speaker Long, and our legal department has it on file. Mr. Senator, you don't have to ask Major General Hua these questions. You can ask our legal department directly. Why do you have to be so aggressive?" Senator A had been interrupted twice by Gu Nianji and was already angry from embarrassment. He straightened his neck and said, "You and Major General Hua are engaged. Of course you're speaking up for him." Gu Nianji's face darkened as she turned to look at the camera. Viewers in front of the TV and netizens watching the live broadcast, watch carefully. This senator doesn't even know his work authorization. Which district is he from? Remember not to vote for him in the future. He's betraying your trust and seeking personal gain for himself. At that moment, the live broadcast happened to turn to Senator A. Everyone saw the nameplate on his desk clearly and knew what his name was and where he was from. He was from the district that elected him to the Senate. With Gu Nianji's publicity, the people in his district naturally saw it clearly. They all remembered this person's name and planned to vote for someone else in the future. Senator A's competitors also instantly seized the opportunity to start advertising to build momentum for the next election. Senator A sat down dizzily, his palms sweaty. He trembled as he thought about how difficult it was to get this political donation. A day ago, someone had asked him to ask Hu Xiaoheng a few tricky questions in today's questioning session in exchange for a donation to his campaign team. In the end, Gu Nianji had rebutted all of them. Moreover, this hateful woman had spoken ill of him in front of a live broadcast in front of the entire nation's audience. Senator A lowered his eyes to hide the resentment in them. His fingers almost scratched off a piece of paint on the table in front of him. Gu Nianji didn't have time to pay attention to him. Her eyes were already on another senator who had stood up. Senator B's questions were very calm at first, and Hu Xiaoheng's answers were also very organized. But unexpectedly, after a few simple questions, Senator B suddenly asked, "Major General Hua, I heard that you have the right to kill?" Gu Nianji and Hu Xiaoheng looked up at him together. This question could be said to be tricky to a certain extent. In a country ruled by law, no one had the right to kill, unless they were sentenced to death according to the law. However, Hu Xiaoheng's organization was originally in a gray area, and its scope of activities was abroad. Whether there was such a thing as right to kill couldn't be measured by domestic laws. But when this Senator B brought it up, he didn't say whether it was within the country or abroad at all. It was as if he had this privilege within the country, and it immediately made the hearts of ordinary people jump to their throats. This is the first chapter of today, chapter 2150, Fans Are Greedy for Candy. Today it was still the third chapter of 10,000 words. The second chapter was 1 p.m., and the third chapter was 9 p.m. Please ask for monthly votes and recommendation votes. P.S. Thank you to Light Smile Like Gauze for the 150,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Thank you to I Am Master Rashi for the 100,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Thank you, Big Shots Little Angels. Chapter 2165. For the Special Operations Forces, having authorization abroad meant that they could take all necessary actions to complete the mission, but this kind of thing couldn't be brought up to the table. Every country had such agencies, and everyone had a tacit understanding that no one would say it out loud in front of the live broadcast audience. For example, the CIA in the United States only reported to the President and was not under the jurisdiction of any other agency. The Special Operations Forces led by Hu Xiaoheng had been placed under the strict jurisdiction of the Senate, the cabinet, and the military from the beginning. This kind of requirement wasn't bad, but there were too many agencies he had to report to, and for such a secret agency that couldn't see the light of day, there were endless hidden dangers. Hu Xiaoheng was the highest leader of this agency, and now that he had moved from the dark to the light, it was no longer important to expose his identity. For example, the director of the CIA in the United States, this person had always been public. But his subordinates weren't. If his field personnel were also public, then what was the point of working on the secret front? They would just be sending people to die. Coupled with the fact that Senator B had deliberately confused the public's attention and specifically brought up the matter of killing human rights in private, it immediately set off a rhythm among the general public. The group of online netizens who had just excitedly called out the Huagu CP were immediately pushed down, and a bunch of people clamored for Major General Hua to answer their questions. For a moment, the inside and outside of the venue echoed, and with the addition of the Internet Water Army with ulterior motives, Hu Xiaoheng was immediately pushed to the forefront of the storm. How could he answer? If he answered no, he would immediately be accused of lying, and it might even involve their secret operations overseas. If he answered yes, it would be even more difficult. It would be like putting his own agency and his subordinates on the fire. Could he stay out of it alone? Hu Xiaoheng pursed his lips and saw that Gu Nianji was about to speak, so he quickly gave her a look to tell her not to speak first. Gu Nianji understood, nodded slightly and gently waved her open palm. Such a subtle movement made the Huagu CP fans go crazy again, and the image of her gently shaking her white palm became a moving picture of a love package, and it quickly spread. Hu Xiaoheng closed his eyes, looked up at Senator B and asked calmly, "Mr. Senator, I would like to ask, why are you asking this question?" Senator B frowned and said, "Major General Hua, I'm the one asking you questions, not you." Hua Xiaoheng's posture was very relaxed. His tall and strong body filled the entire seat, and there was almost no place for his long legs to rest. He leaned back and said with a faint smile, "I'm here to be questioned, not to be judged." Insinuate that the senator had treated him badly and put him at a disadvantage. Gu Nianji seized the opportunity and immediately said, "Major General Hua's words are reasonable. Mr. Senator, please reply to Major General Hua's question first." She continued, "Our parliament's questioning of government and military officials has always been a place for mutual exchange of views. We are equals. If you don't understand, ask me. If I don't understand, ask you. Mr. Counselor, please don't be so condescending. You have no right to judge anyone." Counselor B laughed and said, "Chief Gu is indeed protective of her husband. In fact, I had wanted to suggest to the Senate a long time ago that Chief Gu should not attend this interrogation of Major General Hua." What? The skinny female reporter from before answered the question appropriately. "It's very simple to avoid suspicion." Counselor B shrugged. "Everyone knows that Chief Gu and Major General Hua are engaged. How can these two people appear on opposite occasions at the same time? Isn't this giving Major General Hua a way out?" Gu Nianji played right into his hands and said with a smile, "Mr. Counselor really is treating this place like a courtroom and Major General Hua as a suspect for trial. Chief Gu, did you hear me say anything about a trial? Don't accuse him of anything." Counselor B was even happier. It was quite an honor to be able to criticize Gu Nianji in public. Gu Nianji looked at the other party's cheerful smile and smashed the hammer down without batting an eyelid. "But as far as I know, it's only during court trials that people with family or interests are required to recuse themselves. Now you're asking me to recuse myself, and you're saying that you're not treating this place like a courtroom and Major General Hua as a suspect." Counselor B's expression changed abruptly. His earlier happiness had been swept away by Gu Nianji's words. He wanted to refute, but in a moment of desperation he couldn't think of any other occasion where Gu Nianji would need to formally recuse herself. Gu Nianji didn't give him a chance to quibble and immediately said, "I'm really ashamed of you. Major General Hua is my fiancé, but he is also a soldier who has risked his life for the interests of the country and the people for decades. How many times has he completed missions on the verge of death? You can count his military medals over the years. I really didn't expect you to treat such a soldier who has made great contributions to the country as a suspect without any basis." Gu Nianji's face became serious. "May I ask who gave you the authorization? And who gave you the instructions?" Counselor B was flushed by Gu Nianji's retort, but he still refused to give up. He couldn't help but interrupt Gu Nianji's words and said loudly, "I just want to ask if Major General Hua has the right to kill. That's all. Chief Gu, don't try to change the subject." Gu Nianji also said bluntly, "Major General Hua wants to know why you asked this question, and why you turned a deaf ear to it and avoided answering." The two of them confronted each other and no one was willing to back down. At this time it was time for Speaker Long to come forward. He took the microphone in front of him and said with a smile, "Counselor who asked this question, you really need to explain. You have to remember that we are counselors, not judges. Don't think you are superior." Then he said to Hua Xiaoheng, "After the counselor answers your question, you also have to answer his question." Hua Xiaoheng nodded politely. "Definitely." Speaker Long had spoken and Counselor B couldn't refuse. He gritted his teeth and said, "I heard it from someone else by chance and I was curious." Gu Nianji laughed rudely. "Mr. Counselor, what kind of book did you read to ask such a whimsical and outrageous question?" Counselor B blushed and glared at Hua Xiaoheng. "Major General Hua, isn't it time for you to answer?" Hua Xiaoheng understood the counselor's intentions and it was definitely not good, so he said lightly, "There is no law that gives me this kind of authorization." Counselor B suddenly stood up excitedly and pointed to him. "You said there is no law that gives you authorization, but why did you order someone to assassinate Zhu Qinghong, an important witness in the Kevin case?" Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. It was reasonable to say that he executed Kevin, but what the hell was this about assassinating Zhu Qinghong? Hua Xiaoheng couldn't be bothered to answer. Gu Nianji raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Counselor, if you make such a serious accusation without any evidence again, I will sue you for slander on behalf of Major General Hua." Counselor B rolled his eyes. If Zhu Qinghong wasn't assassinated by Major General Hua, why would he die in a hospital under the special care of the security department? And the police have never been able to catch the murderer. Counselor A also stood up and said, "And Kevin. He was also taken away from the hospital and then mysteriously died in a car accident. How do you explain this? Everyone says that your department does things flawlessly, but how did two messes happen in a row this time? Kevin is still an American citizen, and he was only sentenced to life imprisonment in the first trial. His legal team still has to appeal and there will be a second trial. Aren't you using someone else to do your dirty work? Hua Xiaoheng didn't want to answer these idiotic questions at all. Gu Nianji spoke for him. So the two counselors are representing the Americans. Today I finally understand why you don't like our meritorious hero. As expected, when your ass is crooked, everything is inverted. Chief Gu, don't slander me. Counselor A thought that he probably wouldn't be elected again, so he was a lot less worried about Gu Nianji and began to confront her. We are questioning Major General Hua. You are so protective of your husband. I am only doing my job. Please don't measure others by your own standards. Gu Nianji didn't even look at Counselor A and continued to stare at Counselor B. She said, Mr. Counselor, are you feeling indignant for Kevin? Do you think that our court made a mistake? I can answer this question because I am the prosecuting lawyer for Kevin's case. I am fully qualified to confront you about Kevin's case in court. Counselor B froze for a moment before remembering that Gu Nianji was indeed the prosecuting lawyer for Kevin's case. His heart sank and he thought that this case would probably involve her. He quickly thought about it and said, I am not feeling indignant for Kevin. I would feel indignant for any citizen in his position. Then you should feel indignant for Kevin. Stop pretending to be a reasonable person. Gu Nianji smiled. Fine, even if you are feeling indignant for all citizens in Kevin's position, let me ask you, what evidence do you have to prove that Kevin's death is related to us? As far as I know, it was Zhu Qinghong and two American Special Forces soldiers who illegally took Kevin out of the hospital. The car they were in was illegally modified, and there was a very high yield of explosives in the car. The person who detonated the car was also the person who provided the modified car. May I ask, Mr. Counselor, who provided the car? And who detonated the car? Counselor B glanced at Hua Xiaoheng and said, I think only the organization led by Major General Hua can use explosives with this kind of performance in modified cars. And it was also Major General Hua's people who secretly took Kevin out of the hospital. You're saying that Zhu Qinghong and the American Special Forces soldiers are Major General Hua's people? Gu Nianji wanted to chisel the word wishful thinking into his head. She hadn't expected Counselor B to be so impressed by her. He said confidently, Isn't that so? As far as I know, Zhu Qinghong is a graduate student at the Institute of High Energy Physics, and Major General Hua's mother, Miss Song Jining, is the director of the Institute of High Energy Physics. As for those two American Special Forces soldiers, imagine that other than Major General Hua's privileged organization, who else could smuggle two American Special Forces soldiers into the country without anyone knowing? If I remember correctly, Major General Hua used to be a Special Forces soldier. Maybe he met these two Chinese American Special Forces soldiers when he was on a mission abroad. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone inside and outside the venue fell silent. Many people looked puzzled at the same time and looked at Hua Xiaoheng thoughtfully. Even Gu Nianji was stunned. My goodness, Long Di Dong. This person was really a genius. He actually made it sound so real. He put all the blame on Hua Xiaoheng for the Kevin incident. If Gu Nianji wasn't particularly familiar with Hua Xiaoheng, even she might have been convinced. It seemed that someone had come prepared today. She had really underestimated this group of good-for-nothings. Gu Nianji quickly sent a message to Lu Jin to ask him to help her with an in-depth investigation of the two counselors. At the same time, she organized a counterattack in her mind. If she wanted to do an in-depth background investigation in a short period of time, she could only look for Lu Jin, because only he had such technical means. After sending the message, Gu Nianji patted her slightly blocked chest and took a deep breath. Since Mr. Counselor treats your imagination as fact, then let's talk about the clues you've proposed. First of all, you said that Zhu Qinghong is a graduate student at the Institute of High Energy Physics, and Major General Hua's biological mother, Song Jining, is the director of the Institute of High Energy Physics, so this matter has something to do with Major General Hua. Are you suggesting that Zhu Qinghong went to the hospital to take away felon Kevin, and that Miss Song Jining listened to her son, Major General Hua, and ordered him to do it? Counselor B was almost paralyzed by Gu Nianji's long sentence, but after listening to her carefully repeated a few times, he nodded without hesitation. Isn't that so? Then do you have evidence to prove that Major General Hua ordered Miss Song, and Miss Song ordered Zhu Qinghong? Counselor B snorted disdainfully. Do you still need evidence for that? Anyone with a discerning eye can tell at a glance. Gu Nianji smiled and looked down to see that she had already received the information from Lu Jin on her laptop. She clicked on the email and read it at a glance. She already had an idea. She looked up at Counselor B and smiled. Mr. Counselor, you have a son who finished college in the United States and went to work as a senior executive at Carlyle International Investment Limited. He has a superior and subordinate relationship with Kevin. Of course, Kevin is his superior. Are you standing up for Kevin today for your daughter's future at Carlyle International Investment Limited? Are you using your position for personal gain and deliberately slandering our meritorious minister? Counselor B was slightly taken aback, then laughed loudly. Everyone here knows that I only have one daughter and no son. And my daughter works in a state-owned enterprise. She's just a small technician. What does that have to do with Carlyle? Chief Gu, you're the one who's slandering the counselor. Gu Nianji nodded and leaned forward slightly. She said a name and said, Isn't this person your son? Oh no, he should be your illegitimate child. He and his mother are both abroad. This child was born and raised abroad. After graduating from college 2 years ago, he entered Carlyle International Investment Limited. You were the one who introduced him. A student who just graduated from college became a senior executive at Carlyle in 2 years. Isn't that closely related to you? Counselor B was shocked and blurted out, You're talking nonsense. He didn't understand how the secret he had hidden for more than 20 years had been discovered. This was the second update of the day, 4,000 words, Chapter 2151, What AF * King Talent. The 1 million Chidian coins awarded to Cold Iron Grace in September has been delivered 78 times in advance. The third 4,000-word chapter will be updated at 9 o'clock p.m. Please ask for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you very much. Moi, big shots, little angels. Chapter 2166. Who's talking nonsense between you and me? I can immediately prove it with facts. Gu Nianji smiled disapprovingly. I can prove that you have an illegitimate son, but you can't prove that you don't have one. If I say no, then no. Senator B slammed the table fiercely as if he wanted to fight Gu Nianji. If you say no, then no? Who do you think you are to think so highly of yourself? Gu Nianji's fingers flew as she typed on her laptop. Do you think you can deny this kind of thing just because you want to? Do you think that just because you're a senator, you naturally represent justice and can hide the truth? How difficult is it to do a paternity test? Don't tell me you lived in ancient times and don't know that paternity tests exist in modern society? Gu Nianji said mockingly. The faint smile on her lips made Senator B want to stab her in the chest. Indeed, it was easy to prove that he had an illegitimate child. All he needed was a DNA paternity test. However, it wouldn't be easy for Senator B to prove that he didn't have this illegitimate child. Even if he killed his son now, as long as he didn't immediately turn his bones to ashes, he could still verify the paternity relationship. The muscles on Senator B's face twitched uncontrollably, and his expression was very ugly. However, he could no longer think of a retort to Gu Nianji. He could only glare at Hua Xiaoheng and point at him as he shouted, You're deliberately taking revenge. Because I told the truth. You told the truth? Just because Zhu Qinghong is at the Institute of High Energy Physics, you're saying that this matter has something to do with Major General Hua? The corners of Gu Nianji's mouth twitched. Then you're a member of the Senate. If I have proof that you colluded with the enemy and betrayed the country, does that mean that the entire Senate has something to do with you? Again, there's no direct evidence to prove that Zhu Qinghong was instructed by Ms. Song. You're slandering him. I'm Ms. Song's lawyer and I can sue you right away. As for the 2 active U.S. Special Forces soldiers being Major General Hua's subordinates, if it's true, then it's Major General Hua's credit. If it's false, then you're slandering the U.S. military. Let me tell you. Gu Nianji unknowingly used Lu Jin's catchphrase. Even the U.S. military won't admit it, yet you're in such a hurry to discredit the human beacon in your heart. You're getting yourself into both sides. At the end of the day, it was Counselor B's fault. Lu Jin was elated as he watched in front of the TV. He pointed at the TV and then at himself. He said proudly to Lu Yuan, See that? This girl is my daughter. He was so arrogant that he was about to ascend to the heavens. However, Lu Yuan did not refute her this time. Instead, he smiled and the corners of his eyes curved into deep wrinkles. He nodded and said, Professor Lu, I don't envy you for other things, but you have a daughter like this. You can indeed brag about it for the rest of your life. I'm ashamed of my own inferiority. Lu Jin smiled so widely that his eyes could not be seen. He said in a good mood, If you want a smart and cute child, I can help you do gene editing and try to make her smart and smart. But I'm definitely not as good as Nianji. She's my stroke of genius. Even if I do 1,000 or 10,000 more experiments, I still won't be able to create a perfect gene like Nianji. She is something that can only be found by luck. Some of the epical discoveries in scientific experiments were realized by coincidence. Lu Ji knew that this experiment was the same. Lu Yuan only chuckled and shook his head. Thank you, but Jining and I don't plan to have children. Lu Jin, just as he was about to persuade her, Lu Yuan added, Jining and I are already old. We just want to be together and enjoy our world together. Lu Jin, he finally understood his light bulb constitution. He fiddled with his phone embarrassedly and said, I'll go back after watching the live broadcast. He didn't want to disturb Lu Yuan and Song Jining's world together. Lu Yuan laughed. Professor Lu, don't think too much about it. I'm just saying. Of course, after watching the live broadcast, I'll send you to Xiaoheng's official residence. I'll pick up Jining and we'll go to Xiaoheng's place for dinner. Lu Jin was happy again and watched TV with Lu Yuan. The Senate's interrogation hall was in a mess because of Senator B's sudden situation. The skinny female reporter saw that the situation was not looking good. She stood up with a heavy expression and said to Gu Nianji, Chief Gu, the two senators were talking about the matter just now. How can you suppress them? Are you not letting us speak? Are you not letting us question them? Gu Nianji gently tapped her fingers on the table and said earnestly, Comrade reporter, I'm stopping them from spreading rumors, not stopping them from questioning them. What about you? Are you going to continue spreading false information? How am I spreading rumors? You have to have evidence to back up your words. The female reporter thought that she was also a person of status, so she was embarrassed by Gu Nianji's words. Her face darkened and she wanted to argue with Gu Nianji. If you speak without evidence, then you're just spreading rumors. You know that very well. Gu Nianji chuckled and sat up straight. She said slowly, Evelyn, you're right. Beatrice, when Ms. Hall wrote the autobiography of the French political scientist Voltaire, she said that although I don't agree with you, I swear to the death to defend your right to speak. It's an expression of Voltaire's political ideas. Unfortunately, later on, people spread the rumor and said that it was Voltaire who said it. Actually, it wasn't. However, I'm different from Ms. Evelyn. I don't agree with you, nor do I defend your right to lie. It's against the law to spread rumors and slander. The female reporter couldn't help blushing. The veins on her neck bulged, making her bones even more obvious. She stiffened her neck and continued, How am I spreading rumors? I'm clearly interrogating them. If you know the truth, why don't you tell the television audience clearly? Isn't it because you guys are trying to cover it up that such rumors have the soil to spread? Gu Nianji put away her smile and said seriously, Rumors only spread among brainless people. People with brains will distinguish between truth and falsehood. So whether rumors have the soil to spread has nothing to do with the truth. Besides, why do you want the truth? Do you not believe the case report on national television? Or do you not believe the verdict of the high military court? Both of these things are public and have evidence. The facts are right in front of you. If you still want to pretend to be blind and say that there's no truth, then I can't do anything about it. No one can wake up a person who's pretending to be asleep, and no one can convince a person who's pretending to be stupid. Gu Nianji shrugged and casually expressed her contempt and disdain. The female reporter wanted to refute the case report on national television. She immediately said, Can you prove that the case report broadcasted by the television station is true? Gu Nianji was even more amused. She placed one arm on the table and looked at the female reporter with a half-smile. You're saying that the case report broadcasted by the television station is false? According to the principle of who claims, who provides the evidence. Prove to everyone why the case report is false. The female reporter was anxious. She clenched her fists and said, Prove it's true first. You're just being unreasonable. Gu Nianji didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she looked at the rather famous female reporter. The facts and evidence are all in the case report. It's already proven to be true. Do you know what you're saying? If I say it's not true, shouldn't you have the evidence to prove it's true? The female reporter was used to having others defend her words. However, it didn't work with Gu Nianji. Of course, she wasn't an ordinary person to begin with. She was more professional than anyone the female reporter had interviewed. Gu Nianji almost immediately turned hostile. She said in a low voice, I also said that you're a foreign spy. Can you prove that you're not? Just because you say something, people have to defend themselves. Do you really think you're a Supreme Court justice? This made the female reporter furious. I'm a spy. Show me the evidence. Otherwise I'll sue you for slander. Gu Nianji immediately replied with a smile. That's right, I have to prove my point of view. Similarly, if you say that the case report is false, I also need you to prove it. So stop chasing me for evidence to prove your point. It's purely a waste of everyone's time. No matter the situation, no one had ever succeeded in defeating Gu Nianji. Hua Xiaoheng didn't speak, but his eyes never left Gu Nianji's face. The tenderness in his eyes was undisguised. It was as if everyone in the hall didn't exist. There were only the two of them in the wilderness of time, holding hands and relying on each other. You can't leave me and I can't leave you. When the camera turned to Hua Xiaoheng for the last time, he didn't have time to look away. Instantly the CP fans were shocked. I'm F** King blowing up the Huagu CP for 10,000 years. Move aside. Let me do it. I'm a professional drummer. That gaze is amazing. Although he's not looking at me, I feel like I've fallen into the pit of love with just one look. Help me up. I can still continue to be picky. Gu Nianji also looked at Hua Xiaoheng. Her dark eyes flickered slightly. Hua Xiaoheng, a straight man, had always been very stingy with expressing his emotions. But occasionally indulging like this could kill her. Gu Nianji blushed slightly. A faint blush appeared on her pale face, like the blush of a blooming flower under the moonlight. Hua Xiaoheng finally said, Today's questioning was an eye-opener for me. I've never experienced something like this before. If I've said anything wrong, I hope everyone can correct me. His humility immediately gained more goodwill from everyone. Also, with Gu Nianji by his side, those who wanted to pick on him didn't dare to act rashly. Again, with Chief Gu here, unless you had ironclad evidence, making groundless accusations would only be embarrassing yourself. Seeing that most of the people in the conference hall had kind smiles on their faces, Hua Xiaoheng said, Thank you everyone for your concern and love for us. I'd like to take this opportunity to tell everyone, as well as the audience in front of their televisions and phones, that Chief Gu and I have already set a wedding date. In 6 months, I will hold a wedding ceremony with Nianji. I'll give out sweets to everyone then. As soon as he finished speaking, the hall was filled with enthusiastic applause. Meanwhile, the Huagu CP fans were already so happy that they couldn't speak coherently. I was wondering why Chief Gu's official Weibo suddenly gave out sweets this morning. So the bigger sweets are here. You're so ignorant. This isn't sweets. This is sweets that have turned into spirits. What happened to not turning into spirits after the founding of the People's Republic? Major General Hua personally gave out sweets. This is the best sweets for straight men, right? That goes without saying. Do you have any misconceptions about straight men's level of love speech? The best is just, I want to marry you. So unsophisticated, but I like it. After the Senate questioning ended, Hua Xiaoheng, Zhao Liangzi, and Yin Shixiang got into the car and prepared to return to the official residence. As soon as the car left the underground parking lot of the Senate building, General Ji called. Xiaoheng, come to the underground conference room at the military headquarters. We old men have something to ask you. Hua Xiaoheng replied dryly, Yes, Chief. He could hear General Ji's unhappiness in his voice as if something had happened. Go to the underground conference room at the military headquarters. Hua Xiaoheng ordered the driver. Fan Jian immediately turned the steering wheel and turned in the direction of the military headquarters. Not long after, Hua Xiaoheng's car stopped in front of the military headquarters building. The underground conference room General Ji mentioned was on the 6th floor of the building. This place was also one of the Empire's top secret locations. It used to be called a bomb shelter, but now it was called a security area. Hua Xiaoheng took the elevator down to the door of the conference room. Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang didn't even have the right to go down, so they had to split the work. One waited in front of the elevator, and the other waited at the stairwell to keep watch for Hua Xiaoheng. At the same time, there were also other people's personal secretaries waiting there. Yin Shixiang casually glanced around and saw that the personal secretaries and guards of the most important members of the Supreme Military Council were all there. He walked over to General Ji's personal secretary and handed him a cigarette. He smiled and said, You're here too? Try this? How long have you been waiting? When the man saw that it was the special cigarettes he liked, he took it without hesitation and immediately lit it up. He took a deep breath and scratched his head with his hand. He seemed to say carelessly, It wasn't that long. We just arrived and you guys arrived right behind us. Yin Shixiang was relieved. They had all just arrived, so there shouldn't be any problems. At that moment, Hua Xiaoheng was already standing behind the podium in the conference room. Everyone else was sitting and he was the only one standing. However, it didn't seem like he was giving a speech. It was more like he was being interrogated. Hua Xiaoheng was amused. He thought that if Gu Nianji was here she would probably flip out again. His expression was unusually relaxed and calm. He didn't seem to be under pressure at all. General Ji wore his presbyopic glasses and quietly looked at him for a while. Seeing that Hua Xiaoheng's demeanor was calm and his aura didn't change, he nodded slightly. However, the expression on his face didn't change. He still had a straight face as if he was angry. The other people also looked at him expressionlessly. They seemed to be a little dissatisfied with him. Hua Xiaoheng calmly waited for a while before saying, "Dear generals and chiefs, may I ask why you called me here? What do you think?" General Ji stood up and walked over to put a piece of paper in front of Hua Xiaoheng. "Explain what's going on." This was the third update of the day, 4,000 words. Chapter 2152, Top Romantic Words for a Straight Man. The 1 million Qigyan coins awarded to Cold Iron Grace in September have been added to the update 20 times. September's Silver Union points have all been added. Ask for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you, moi big bosses, little angels. Genius. 1 second to remember this site's address. Mobile version, M. Chapter 2167. Hua Xiaoheng glanced down at it. It was the warrant he had given to Yin Shixiang to execute Kevin. This was the execution warrant personally signed by General Ji and signed by Hua Xiaoheng. It was also the so-called killing of human rights that had been exposed by the senator during the Senate's questioning today. Of course, this wasn't some killing of human rights that could be executed at will. It had many restrictions, and the biggest restriction was that its number was extremely limited. Hua Xiaoheng only had one, and after using it he would have to go through very strict procedures to obtain a second one. And the number of warrants that General Ji could issue was also strictly limited. The official name of this warrant wasn't killing of human rights, but a special warrant. "Explain, why did you execute Kevin?" General Ji said with a sullen face. "Don't tell me you don't know Kevin's background. If the person behind him knew the truth, he could even provoke a war between the Huaxia Empire and the United States. Haven't you considered this problem? I'll give you the special warrant. Is this how you obey the orders of the organization and serve the country?" There weren't many people in the underground conference room, but every one of them was an iron-fisted figure who could influence the future of the country. They were all the true higher-ups of the military. Speaker Long and Prime Minister Bai couldn't even be compared to these people. Hua Xiaoheng waited for General Ji to finish speaking, then glanced at the people sitting in front of him. Seeing that they didn't speak and only looked at him silently, it proved that they had the same opinion as General Ji. No one added anything else. Because in their hearts, they would always consider the interests of the country. They wouldn't allow anyone or anything to cause great harm to the overall interests of the country. Hua Xiaoheng composed himself and picked up the warrant. He showed it to the people below and said, "This is the warrant I signed because I think it's time for Kevin to die. Since the person behind him wants to save him at all costs, I don't want them to achieve this goal." After a pause he said word by word, "We must oppose what the enemy supports. Everyone still remembers this, right? So if the enemy wants to save him, he has to die to cut off their hopes. It's that simple." General Ji frowned. "Xiaoheng, aren't you being a little rash by doing this? Before I answer your question, I would like to ask, do you know who the person behind Kevin is?" The people below looked at each other. Then a white-haired old man sitting on the far left said, "We don't know who it is exactly, but this person can get the President of the United States and the Secretary of State. He's not simple. We also received news that this person is not only the President and Secretary of State of the United States, but he is also said to have a close relationship with the United States Department of Defense. I heard that he is an important weapon supplier to them." "Firearms?" Hua Xiaoheng looked up in surprise. "Where did you get this information from?" The old man smiled. "Xiaoheng, you're in this line of work. Have you forgotten our rules? Don't tell." Everyone laughed softly. What the old man said in English was actually a joke. This was an established rule in the US military, not the rule of the Chinese military. What he meant was actually the unspoken rules of the intelligence front. Ever since their organization was established, their intelligence work had been outstanding. After the founding of the People's Republic, it was actually much worse than before. But even if it was worse, it was a vertical comparison. It was worse than before. Horizontally, the Huaxia Intelligence Agency was second to none among the world's intelligence agencies. A foreign movie once ridiculed that the most mysterious intelligence agency in the world was not Russia's KGB, the CIA, Israel's Mossad, or the United Kingdom's MI6, but the Wuxia Intelligence Agency, because other countries did not even know what it was called. They only knew it as the relevant department. It was so mysterious and cool. In recent years, the Wuxia Special Operations Forces and the Security Department had begun to rise internationally and had a sense of existence. But very few people knew that the composition of the Wuxia Foreign Intelligence Agency was quite complicated. The military alone had 5 external organizations. Currently, only the Special Operations Forces was an official organization that everyone knew. There were 4 other organizations, each led by different people, and all had one-way contact with people overseas. Once the people they contacted disappeared, the intelligence line would completely disappear. Even the internal departments were kings don't see kings. They never announced their external contacts and would only bring back the corresponding information. And the details of this kind of information would not be shared with the internal departments. For example, the old man said that the person behind Kevin was a weapons supplier. Even He Xiaoheng's Special Operations Forces field team hadn't found this information yet. He pondered for a moment and said, "Is this person a woman? Is she called Madam?" The white-haired old man smiled but didn't say anything. He Xiaoheng glanced at him and suddenly said, "Queen of Hearts?" The white-haired old man's expression was slightly surprised. Although he hid it very quickly, He Xiaoheng still caught it. It seemed that Kevin's backer was this Queen of Hearts. His expression became serious and he said, "I know the concerns and thoughts of all the chiefs, but what I want to say is that Kevin didn't come to the Wuxia Empire on a whim. It was prepared and arranged for a long time. It started at least a year and a half or even 2 years ago. To put it further, it might have started 18 years ago." The people in the conference room were silent for a moment. General G pursed his lips and said, "Kevin isn't even 30 yet. You're saying that he started targeting the Wuxia Empire 18 years ago? It's not him. It's the person behind him." He Xiaoheng put down the warrant and said in a heavy voice, "Chiefs, do you still remember the major accident that occurred in the joint project between our military and the Institute of High Energy Physics 18 years ago? The people in this room were all insiders of the accident that year. They even knew about the existence of the other world. They also knew that He Guanyuan or Lu Yuan had gone to the other world 18 years ago because of the failure of the experiment. Therefore, He Xiaoheng didn't continue to hide anything. When I was investigating Kevin's case, I found out that the person behind him was related to the major experimental accident in our military 18 years ago. And everyone knows that Kevin was still a child 18 years ago, so what happened 18 years ago shouldn't have anything to do with him. The only thing that's related is the person behind him. So to me, Kevin's appearance is just a cover to lure out the big shot behind him." The white-haired old man interrupted him and said, "If Kevin is so important, why did you order his execution? Isn't it better to keep him and make him more useful?" He Xiaoheng calmly took 2 steps forward and walked out from behind the podium. He said calmly, "It's precisely because he's so important that executing him can cause irreparable damage to the other party. And the other party's loss is our gain." These words were so true that almost no one present could refute them. They all felt dizzy. But what if your speculation is wrong? What if Kevin isn't important at all and is just a cover given to us by the other party? He Xiaoheng put his hands in his trouser pockets and said casually, "If he's not important at all, so be it. What does it matter if he's killed? Anyway, the crimes he committed are already enough to be executed by shooting." This was the first chapter of the day, chapter 2153, The Big Shot Behind. Today it was delivered at midnight. The second chapter was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the third chapter was 9 o'clock in the evening. Please ask for monthly votes and recommendation votes. P.S. Thank you to the Peninsula Princess for the 50,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Thank you, big shots, little angels. Chapter 2168. After He Xiaoheng finished speaking, these people thought about it for a while and felt relieved. As long as He Xiaoheng had a valid reason, they weren't pedantic people and wouldn't blame him. The atmosphere in the room gradually became less tense. General G breathed a sigh of relief and asked the question he was most concerned about. "You just said that the person behind Kevin was related to the failure of our experiment 18 years ago? Do you have any evidence to prove this?" He Xiaoheng first told them about the explosion they encountered when they were chasing Kevin on Christmas Eve last year, then said, "This time, Zhu Qinghong brought people to the hospital to kidnap Kevin. When they realized that it was a fake person, they jumped out of the car and ran for their life. Their car was detonated by their own people remotely, and the energy of the explosion was similar to that year. Actually, the remote detonation of Zhuo Qinghong's car was more similar to the situation with Gu Nianji's car 8 years ago. However, Hu Xiaoheng didn't want these people to focus on Gu Nianji again, so he changed his words slightly. This wasn't too outrageous. Because it was indeed similar, there was a high-energy magnetic field mixed in. Everyone was deep in thought after hearing this. A fat old man sitting next to General Ji said in a low voice, "I was the one who presided over the experiment between the military and the Institute of High-Energy Physics 18 years ago. Back then, I sent He Guanyuan as the military representative to the Institute of High-Energy Physics to cooperate with Song Haichuan, but the experiment failed. Someone was deliberately causing trouble?" Hu Xiaoheng's eyes narrowed slightly and he said, "The experiment 18 years ago actually didn't fail." "What did you say?" The fat old man almost jumped up and his body was actually very agile. "Say it again." "What do you mean?" General Ji added, "That's right," Xiaoheng explained. "We all know that the experiment failed 18 years ago. Later, when Baijini took over the Institute of High Energy Physics, she kept saying that the experiment back then had failed, so she wanted to restart the experiment. Unfortunately, she didn't even get started, and after spending so much time she found nothing." "Why did you say that the experiment back then didn't fail? You mean it succeeded?" Hu Xiaoheng nodded calmly and said, "It's a very simple reason. My uncle, Senior Colonel He Guanyuan, thought he had sacrificed himself in the line of duty. But now it turns out that he didn't sacrifice himself, but went to the other world. 18 years ago, the joint experiment between the military and the Institute of High Energy Physics was to find the magnetic resonance frequency. The experiment could activate the magnetic resonance instrument in the opposite space. Senior Colonel He Guanyuan and the other 4 soldiers didn't die in the explosion. Instead, they went to the other world. How did he get there? There is only one explanation, and that is that the magnetic resonance instrument we experimented with was successful 18 years ago." The chubby old man who was in charge of the experiment on the military side stared blankly as he muttered, "Yes. If that's the case, then it should be successful. At that time, I remember that Director Song marked the DNA of all the people who participated in the experiment in the magnetic resonance device he used for the experiment. He said that if the experiment was successful, he would officially send them over. In the end, during the last field inspection, there was a sudden explosion." Hu Xiaoheng looked at the old man sympathetically and sighed. "Senior Colonel He Guanyuan's experience has proven that the experiment back then was actually successful. The magnetic resonance instrument successfully captured the magnetic field frequency of the opposite space, thus opening a wormhole that can realize the exchange of 2 parallel worlds." "But why did there be a big explosion?" "Later, the reason was that when the high-energy magnetic field energy was used, the timing of the release of energy was wrong. The magnetic field energy that should have been released in a few minutes was compressed to 1,000th of a second. As you can imagine, the energy that should have been released in a few minutes was compressed to that extent. How could there not be a big explosion? Just like a pressure cooker, when you suddenly shrink the internal space of the pressure cooker, it will also explode into pieces. And because our experiment released all the energy in a short period of time, it caused a huge explosion that killed almost all of us who participated in the experiment. The only person who survived was my mother, Song Jining, but her body and brain were severely injured. She was ill for 16 years and was only cured 2 years ago." Hu Xiaoheng paused for a moment. The big shots in the conference room met and discussed what Hu Xiaoheng had just said. After a while, the white-haired old man raised his head and said, "Then what evidence do you have to prove that the wrong time of the release of energy was deliberately messed up, or that the experimenters made an accident?" Hu Xiaoheng said very frankly, "If you want direct evidence, for example, who did it? I still don't know who it was. But on Christmas Eve last year, Kevin created an explosion of the same nature. Was it really just a coincidence? An experiment like ours can't be completed without the strength of the entire country. Therefore, ordinary people aren't qualified to coincide with us. In other words, what can coincide with us is definitely not a coincidence. How can there be such a coincidence? I've been working on the special front for so many years and I've only found one rule. There are no coincidences in this world, only deliberate planning." After a pause, Hu Xiaoheng's voice suddenly became low. "More importantly, have you thought about the real consequences of the failure of the experiment back then?" He looked at the big shots sitting below with a deep gaze and said bitterly, "It was this failure that caused our experiment to stop for 18 years. 18 years? How many technological advances have been stifled? This almost blocked the technological progress of our generation. Hua Xiaoheng's statement was something the big shots had never considered before. Now that they thought about the cause and effect of what he said, their faces turned ashen. The fat old man couldn't help but have his eyes turn red. He sobbed and said, "I didn't do my job well. I shouldn't have given up back then. I should have let someone continue investigating." There was a big explosion back then and all the elite scientists and young students related to it were killed, General G said faintly. General G said faintly, "Who has such a deep hatred for us? I don't think I need to do any research. I already have an idea." There were many things that, if one didn't find the right angle, the view would always be different. Just like the failure of the experiment back then, everyone thought it was just a normal scientific setback, so no one thought that someone was deliberately causing trouble to obstruct the development of Huaxia's technology. Now that they were reminded that it wasn't a simple failure of the experiment, but that it had been sabotaged, everyone quickly thought of who had the motive and ability to do this to the Huaxia Empire. Hua Xiaoheng also had his own suspicions, but he was very cautious and didn't voice his thoughts. He only said, "Is there anything else, sir? If there's nothing else, I have to go back and assign work." After solving a big problem in their minds, the people in the room completely relaxed. They were all experienced people who were mature and prudent. No matter what they thought, they wouldn't show it on their faces. General G smiled and said, "I heard that you announced your wedding date with Nianji at the Senate today? Will you send invitations to us old guys?" These people laughed and said, "Yes, Major General Hua, we're also waiting for your wedding invitation." The few people who had been at odds with him just a moment ago immediately turned into amiable old grandpas with smiles on their faces. Hua Xiaoheng cursed in his heart, but he still said respectfully, "I'll definitely send invitations to everyone. I hope that all of you will do me the honor." He also smiled and continued, "This time, because President Putin of Russia said that he would be a witness, we confirmed the date 6 months in advance. This way he can also arrange his work according to the time and make time." General G came back to his senses and laughed. "That's good. You guys have to plan it well. Don't embarrass our country." Hua Xiaoheng smiled and said, "Don't worry, sir. I'll definitely make it big. Not only will it not embarrass the country, but it will also greatly increase the country's reputation." "Oh? Then we'll have to wait and see." General G happily slapped the table. However, when the others left and he and Hua Xiaoheng walked out of the conference room, he whispered to him, "I know you're rich, but don't be too extravagant. You and Nianji are both public officials. If you're too extravagant, it won't be good for you." Hua Xiaoheng smiled and said, "When I say big, it doesn't have to be extravagant, but it has to have a big enough impact. In short, I want the whole world to know that I'm married to Nianji. I'll share everything with her." General G was so embarrassed by his sappy words that his teeth ached. He pursed his lips for a long time before saying, "Why do I feel like your marriage isn't simple? My wedding with Nianji can't be simple," Hua Xiaoheng said meaningfully. General G glanced at him and felt that Hua Xiaoheng was digging a hole again. For a moment he felt that Gu Nianji was quite pitiful. He whispered, "Xiaoheng, don't say that I'm too nosy, but it's a wedding after all. It's better not to mix it with work. Since it's a wedding, get married properly. Don't get married and still think about killing several birds with one stone. I'm sorry for Nianji, a good girl." General G persuaded Hua Xiaoheng earnestly. Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. He pursed his lips and didn't say anything else. It wasn't until he walked out of the elevator that he sincerely said to General G, "Thank you for your guidance, Chief. I understand what to do." "That's right. You're the talent I value the most. I hope that you can have a happy marriage and a happy family in the future. I also know that you won't marry anyone but Nianji, so don't let her have any regrets on her once-in-a-lifetime wedding." Hua Xiaoheng nodded cautiously and said very sincerely, "I'll remember, Chief." "Okay, go back. Since you're talking about this on the live broadcast today, I'm afraid that foreign leaders will also come to ask for wedding invitations. You have to be fully prepared." General G stood at the door and looked him up and down with his hands behind his back. "Do you need a vacation? Also, do you want me to assign you another team to prepare for the wedding?" Hua Xiaoheng smiled and shook his head. "I'll think about it." Yin Shixiang followed him out and walked to the side of the car to open the door for Hua Xiaoheng. At the same time he turned to General G with a smile and said, "Chief, we're already discussing the team ourselves. For Major General Hua and Nianji's wedding, we've set up a wedding preparation team. We'll start working soon." "Ah, Xiaoheng, it seems like your subordinates are also loyal to you. They can even help you with this kind of thing." Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi smiled together and said, It's only right. Major General Hua is a good boss. In fact, he was not only a good boss, but also a person who truly valued his comrades more than his own family. They were completely convinced of being Hua Xiaoheng's subordinates and were ready to sacrifice their lives for him at any time. Because Hua Xiaoheng was also a person who would sacrifice his life for his comrades at any time. For soldiers, they were people who could trust each other with their backs. After returning to the official residence from the military headquarters, Hua Xiaoheng found Gu Nianji and Lu Jin sitting in the living room. The father and daughter had their heads together. He didn't know what they were doing, but they would laugh happily from time to time. Hua Xiaoheng looked at his watch. It was only 2 in the afternoon, just past lunchtime. He hung his military cap on the coat hook at the entrance and walked in with a smile. "Hello, Chief." The orderly standing guard at the entrance of the living room saluted him. It was also a reminder to the father and daughter in the living room that Hua Xiaoheng had returned. Gu Nianji turned around and saw Hua Xiaoheng come in. She smiled and waved at him. "Major General Hua, come quickly. Look at this Weibo. We're dying of laughter." Hua Xiaoheng walked over and glanced at the iPad on Gu Nianji's lap. The father and daughter were looking at Weibo. Gu Nianji raised the iPad. "Look, there's a blogger here. His ID is Major General Hua. Is Nianji married today? It said that he'll be clocking in every day until the day of our wedding." Her big eyes were filled with undisguised excitement and joy. This was what it looked like to be married. She was as happy as a bride. She would only get married once in her life. Hua Xiaoheng's heart softened. He patted her head and smiled. "Then do you want to repost it for her?" Gu Nianji shook her head and said, "I won't repost it now. I'll repost it on the day of our wedding." Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "Okay, I'll repost it with you." Lu Jin patted the back of the sofa excitedly and said, "That's a proper official sweetheart. You're going to kill your CP fans." Hua Xiaoheng, Gu Nianji smiled awkwardly, but she still held Lu Jin's hand and said, "Dad, you've been browsing Weibo too much recently. Don't get involved in too much fan culture." Even the CP fans knew about it, and there were official sweethearts. Gu Nianji was confused when she heard these words from Lu Jin. Hua Xiaoheng held Gu Nianji's hand and sat on the sofa. He looked at her with a smile for a while. The words in his heart rolled around his mouth for a long time, but in the end he said, "What kind of wedding do you want?" Gu Nianji tilted her head to look at him and said thoughtfully, "What are you trying to say? Why do I feel like you weren't talking about the wedding?" Hua Xiaoheng, Gu Nianji held his hand. "What's there that you can't tell me?" Lu Jin looked at them and said, "That's right. What are you trying to hide from my girl?" This was today's second update, Chapter 2154, What Kind of Wedding Do You Want? 1. Today it was delivered at midnight. P.S. The 100,000 Qidian coins that the Peninsula Princess had tipped last September had been delivered twice. At 9 o'clock in the evening of the third update. Please ask for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you so much, moi big shots and little angels. Chapter 2169. Hua Xiaoheng was moved for less than a second when Lu Jin said, "You can hide it from her, but you can't hide it from me. I'll expose you in a minute." Hua Xiaoheng, Gu Nianji rubbed her temples and wanted to pull Hua Xiaoheng upstairs to talk alone. However, seeing how Lu Jin was staring at them with great interest, as if he wouldn't give up until he achieved his goal, and how much he loved her, Gu Nianji didn't want to exclude Lu Jin. This was her biological father. How could she not let her father know that she was getting married? Gu Nianji's mind raced. She leaned against Lu Jin and looked at Hua Xiaoheng with a smile. "Yes, Major General Hua, just say what you want to say. Being secretive makes me feel like you're not sincere." "How am I secretive? I'm asking you what kind of wedding you want. Don't you women care about your own wedding the most?" Hua Xiaoheng's face broke into a charming smile, and his voice was low and magnetic. Gu Nianji was almost blinded by the sudden smile on his handsome face. She quickly closed her eyes and shook her head. After calming down, she opened her eyes and said seriously, "Who told you that women care about their own wedding the most? You're being too biased." That's right, that's right. Lu Jin was someone who wanted to flatter his daughter regardless of the occasion. He glared at Hua Xiaoheng and said, "Why do you care about what other women care about? What you should care about is what my girl cares about the most." You said, "other women," as if you've had many women. All the women in the world have been summarized by you in one sentence. Now it was Hua Xiaoheng's turn to rub his temples. He thought about it and decided not to argue with someone as intelligent as Lu Jin. He couldn't outdo him anyway. Moreover, there seemed to be something wrong with what he had said just now. He immediately apologized sincerely. I was wrong just now. I shouldn't have said that. But Nianji, do you really not care about your wedding? Gu Nianji said word by word, what I care about the most is whether you're honest with me and not a wedding for show. Of course the wedding is important, but I won't give up something more important for a wedding for show. Hua Xiaoheng composed himself and looked at her deeply. He decided to tell her the whole story and let her decide what to do. This was their wedding. She had all the say in it. Hua Xiaoheng stood up and said, there is indeed something. Nianji, Uncle Lu, shall we go upstairs to the study to talk? The study of his official residence was one of the most secure places in the country. Gu Nianji perked up. Really? That's great. Hua Xiaoheng clenched her small fists. Her fingers were as tender as onion tubes, and he held her hand in amusement. Let's go. Lu Jin put the iPad on the sofa and followed her. After entering the study, Hua Xiaoheng closed the door and sat on the couch in the middle of the study. Gu Nianji and Lu Jin sat opposite him and looked at him curiously. Hua Xiaoheng was starting to get a headache again. He looked at the father and daughter, thought for a moment, and decided to start from the beginning. He told Lu Jin and Gu Nianji about General Ji calling him over for questioning today. Other than the execution of Kevin, Lu Jin and Gu Nianji knew everything else, so there was nothing to hide. Moreover, most of what he was talking about was old events from 18 years ago. He had hoped that Lu Jin could help him sort out these clues. Hua Xiaoheng added, Uncle Lu knows that the experiment from 18 years ago was actually done after you communicated with Gu Xiangwen here. Gu Xiangwen here contacted my uncle and hoped that our country would also start such an experiment. Lu Jin nodded slowly and looked at Hua Xiaoheng strangely. It was obvious that he was thinking about something. Gu Nianji waited by the side for a while, her mind racing. She was eager to try, but she hesitated to speak. Hua Xiaoheng saw this and raised his hand. Nianji, what do you want to say? Gu Nianji blinked and looked at Lu Jin, then at Hua Xiaoheng. She stammered, I don't have any big ideas. It's just that the reason you mentioned just now seems familiar. Familiar? Hua Xiaoheng frowned. Which reason am I talking about? What do you mean by familiar? Gu Nianji didn't dare to look into Hua Xiaoheng's eyes again. She looked down at the floor and unconsciously dug her fingers on the sofa. She said, you said that after the experiment accident, China's development in this area hasn't improved. It's like this technology has been blocked for 18 years. Yes, then what do you mean by familiar? Gu Nianji quietly looked up. Her long eyelashes fluttered rapidly. Like a swallow's tail after the rain, they drew a shocking horizontal line in the sky. She mustered up her courage and said, when I was in the other world, my father once used a problematic experimental design to block more than 30 years of development in biological genetics in Japan. Major General Hua, do you still remember? My father once used a completely wrong experimental design to lead Ishihara Baisan and even the entire biological genetic engineering research in Japan to a dead end, thus blocking the progress of their biological genetic engineering research. Hua Xiaoheng was slightly stunned, but he quickly remembered. His eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Lu Jin. It was such an unreliable person, a patient with a serious interpersonal disorder, who had used a meticulously designed experiment more than 30 years ago to lock in the development of biological genetic engineering in Ishihara Baisan, or rather, the entire Japan in that world. For more than 30 years, Japan had made no progress in biological genetics. It was completely different from Japan here. On the other hand, China had encountered the exact opposite. Someone had interfered with their experiment and locked in on China's research progress in high-energy physics for 18 years. Gu Nianji sighed and said, my father is still the best. He made the other party fall behind for 30 years and have made no progress until now. In other words, China had only been locked in for 18 years, and they had now made a breakthrough in the field of high-energy physics that had been locked in. In contrast, China was more promising. Hua Xiaoheng didn't feel gratified at all. He frowned slightly and pondered for a long time before saying slowly, I didn't connect these two things before. Now that I think about it, don't you think there's a connection between the two? Gu Nianji's heart sank. She subconsciously held Lu Jin's hand and said uneasily, Major General Hua, what do you mean? My dad won't. She was worried that Hua Xiaoheng would think that the failed experiment and explosion 18 years ago had something to do with Lu Jin. After all, the start of the experiment had an indelible relationship with Lu Jin, who was still in the other world at that time. Hua Xiaoheng immediately knew that Gu Nianji had misunderstood. He shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. That's not what I meant. This is today's third watch. Chapter 2155, What kind of wedding do you want to? Today it was delivered at midnight as usual. P.S. This is for the Peninsula Princess, who was promoted to the Alliance Leader position in September last year. Ask for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Genius 1 second remember site address. Mobile version, M. Chapter 2170. Then what do you mean? Gu Nianji looked at Hua Xiaoheng nervously. Her lacquered eyes were filled with vigilance and unease. She even tilted her body slightly and stood in front of Lu Jin, as if Hua Xiaoheng had a gun in his hand. If she didn't do this, Lu Jin would be shot dead by Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng felt a little upset when he saw this. However, he had always been calmer than his peers and he was a soldier on a special front. Not only did he not show his emotions, but even when he did, no one knew what he was really thinking. Therefore his expression didn't change. He only looked amused. He tilted his head, raised his hand and pointed in Gu Nianji's direction. Lu Jin was very touched. He was also a potential expert in psychology, so he understood what a person's subconscious body movements meant. This was a more accurate indicator of a person's true thoughts than their facial movements. She turned her body slightly in front of him. No matter which theory she used, it was a proper protection. It was for her father's determination and will to resist her husband. Lu Jin knew that he was exaggerating, but his girl was so good, so what if he exaggerated a little? He peeked his head out from behind Gu Nianji and smiled smugly at Hua Xiaoheng. Xiaoheng, you saw it. My girl is always so protective of me. Don't think too much of it. My girl is respecting me and protecting me as an elder. Hua Xiaoheng? He wasn't thinking too much. It was your girl who was thinking too much. Hua Xiaoheng silently complained in his heart, but he still had to maintain a smile on his face. He explained, Nianji, what I mean is, if these two things are related and Uncle Lu isn't the link, then who is the person who connected these two things? Gu Nianji's eyes flashed and she blurted out. Japanese? Lu Jin had locked onto Japan, the country in the other world that had developed biological genetic technology. If there was really a connection, then the country in the other world that had locked onto Huaxia's high-energy physics development was Japan. Only then could the two be linked. Of course, this was only Hua Xiaoheng's guess. Gu Nianji finally understood and breathed a sigh of relief. Now that the alarm had been lifted, she perked up and walked over to Hua Xiaoheng to sit down. Hugging his arm, she said, You really scared me to death just now. Hua Xiaoheng patted her hand. The emptiness in his heart was instantly filled by her. This girl's influence on him was too great. It really felt like a thought from heaven to hell. Hua Xiaoheng turned to look at her with lingering fear and smoothed the slightly sweaty hair off her forehead. If it weren't for the fact that Lu Jin was glaring at him from the other side, he would have kissed him. Lu Jin chuckled as he watched Gu Nianji act coquettishly at Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng's unconcealable doting and joy for the girl beside him made him very satisfied. He leaned back on the sofa, crossed his legs and said proudly, Spoiling her is the right thing to do. I don't have any other request from you. As long as you spoil my daughter to death, your problems will be my problems in the future. I will definitely help you to the end. When these words came out of Lu Jin's mouth, even someone as calm and collected as Hua Xiaoheng couldn't help but feel his heart pound. It was too tempting. But was he someone who would betray his feelings for Nianji for the sake of profit? Of course not. Hua Xiaoheng put his arm around Gu Nianji's shoulder and said with a smile, Don't worry, uncle. Not only will I spoil Nianji, but I will also teach her a lot of things so that she won't feel bored living with me. This was much more interesting to Gu Nianji than simply spoiling him. She had been living by Hua Xiaoheng's side since she was 12 years old, and had long been used to learning from him. Smart people like to try new things and Gu Nianji was no exception. She couldn't help but raise her head and kiss Hua Xiaoheng on the cheek. She giggled and said, Major General Hua, are you going to teach me how to be a person? Hua Xiaoheng? He was indeed going to teach her how to be a person. It would begin immediately after the wedding. A smile flashed across Hua Xiaoheng's eyes. He no longer avoided Lu Jin's presence and lowered his head to kiss Gu Nianji on the lips. Lu Jin looked at them with a smile and rubbed his hands. You guys have to have a child as soon as possible after you get married. I'll help you take care of it. I promise I'll feed it scientifically. Gu Nianji, feed? Gu Nianji raised her eyebrows impolitely. Dad, isn't it enough for you to feed my pink piggy? Do you want to raise other piggies? You're already big enough. You don't need Dad to feed you anymore. Lu Jin sighed. Dad just wants to help you raise piggies. The corners of Hua Xiaoheng's eyes twitched. He said calmly, My son isn't a piggy. He's called a piggy. None of you are allowed to feed him. Gu Nianji, she looked at Hua Xiaoheng quietly and said in a low voice, Are you so sure it's a son? Sir's son and then have a daughter. Don't you like the little girl to have a brother who can dote on her and take her everywhere to play? Hua Xiaoheng quietly placed his hand on Gu Nianji's soft waist. As long as she dared to say no, he would tickle her. However, Gu Nianji didn't notice Hua Xiaoheng's move at all. Instead, she was enthralled by him and said, Brother taking his sister everywhere to play? I like it so much. Lu Jin was also very satisfied. Then it's a happy deal. Sir's son, and then have another daughter, I'll take care of them for you. Dad will hire a professional nanny. You just need to see them often. Gu Nianji spoke as if she had already given birth to 2 babies and was waiting for them to watch in the next room. What nanny would be more professional than your old father? Lu Jin's eyes widened and he began to roll up his sleeves. I'll start working as a smart robot nanny right now. Just you wait. In 16 months, the smart robot nanny number 1 will officially start working. Gu Nianji, Hua Xiaoheng was more composed than the 2 of them. He said calmly, It would be great if there was such a smart robot nanny, but I think it's better for babies to have more contact with people. No matter how good a smart robot is, it's still a machine. I know, so they just help me with chores. I'll make sure I'm with the piggies 24 hours a day. Lu Jin almost raised his right hand to swear. Gu Nianji came back to her senses and said with a smile, Stop. We can talk about this in 6 months. Let's talk about Major General Hua's worries now. She looked at Hua Xiaoheng and refused to let him go. Then why are you hesitating? What does what you're saying have to do with our wedding? This was the first update of the day, Chapter 2156. What kind of wedding do you want? 3. Today it was delivered at 3 o'clock. The second update was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the third update was at 9 o'clock in the evening. Today was the last day of the double monthly votes. If you have monthly votes, hurry up and vote. P.S. Thank you, Enigma Angxi, for the 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Thank you so much, kiss me little angels. Chapter 2171. She had finally asked about this topic. Hua Xiaoheng took a deep breath and pulled his arm out of Gu Nianji's embrace. He sat up straight and spoke slowly. There was an indescribable allure in his calmness. Of course that was for Gu Nianji. Nianji, since you must ask, I won't hide it from you. As Hua Xiaoheng spoke, he still looked away from Gu Nianji's big black and white eyes. He said, You also know that what happened recently is not only related to Ms. Song, but also to you and me. President Liu deduced that the mastermind is targeting the past, present and future of our Huaxia Empire. Although it is exaggerated, according to the analysis of the situation we have, it also makes sense. It's not that Ms. Song and I can represent the past, present and future of the entire Huaxia Empire. It's that the mastermind's goal is to destroy the foundation that our country can survive. This foundation can be you, me, her, or anyone in Huaxia Empire. As long as they can make a major contribution to our country, they will be among the targets that the mastermind wants to destroy. Gu Nianji nodded and said angrily, I know, so I hope we won't let this mastermind off. Moreover, they've been hiding behind the scenes and stirring up trouble for so long. It's time for them to pay the price. Hua Xiaoheng couldn't help looking over and saw that her sparkling eyes were even brighter than the stars in the sky. They were sparkling and made people want to hold them in their hands and fill their palms with starlight. You also think they should pay the price? Of course, Gu Nianji said without hesitation. 18 years. They've been free and unfettered for 18 years since the experiment failed. Can you tolerate it? She tilted her head to look at Hua Xiaoheng and said very seriously, You can tolerate it, but I can't either. Hua Xiaoheng touched her head and his fingers slid down her smooth black hair. He paused for a moment before retracting them. He smiled and said, Yes, I can't tolerate it either. So I've decided that after our wedding, I'll set up a plan to lure the mastermind out and catch them all in one fell swoop. Gu Nianji sighed in disappointment and said, Is that why you're hesitating to speak? Are you worried that I'll be unhappy if you have to go on a mission right after getting married? Hua Xiaoheng. Yes. Although that wasn't the case, Gu Nianji thought it was about the same. He felt more and more guilty. He threw his previous plans far away and wholeheartedly wanted to give Gu Nianji the most unforgettable wedding. After all, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He couldn't let her have any regrets. Hua Xiaoheng was still thinking about what kind of surprise to give Gu Nianji that would be unforgettable for the rest of her life when Gu Nianji's eyes lit up. Hua Xiaoheng narrowed his eyes. Nianji? Do you have anything to say? Gu Nianji gave him a sweet, flattering smile. Curling her slender index finger, she crooked it at him. Hua Xiaoheng bent down and slowly approached her. What is it? Hua Xiao, let me say something. Don't overthink it. Her tone was careful and her expression was that of a fawning one. Her big, intelligent eyes were rolling around, looking extremely lively. Hua Xiaoheng nodded with a smile. Speak. Gu Nianji clenched her fists. She was a little nervous but also very excited. Would Hua Xiao agree to it? Or would he think that she was messing around? After all, he had been begging for a wedding for so long. Gu Nianji's eyes sparkled. When Hua Xiaoheng was close enough, she fiddled with the tightly fastened collar on his neck and whispered, Hua Xiao, I was just thinking that our wedding will definitely be very grand, right? Hua Xiaoheng. Gu Nianji saw that his expression didn't change, so she mustered up her courage and said, After today's live broadcast, I think the whole world should know, right? Yes. Hua Xiaoheng snorted. It was very low. Then the mastermind behind this also knows, right? Hua Xiaoheng. He suddenly felt that Gu Nianji's tone of questioning was a little strange. It was as if the trial had taken over and she was beginning to interrogate him as the defendant. Gu Nianji became more and more excited. Her sparkling eyes seemed to have the power to bewitch people. She continued, If the mastermind really wanted to target us, do you think they would be so kind as to let us have a perfect, undisturbed wedding? Hua Xiaoheng. He suddenly understood what Gu Nianji meant, and he couldn't help but tighten his grip on Gu Nianji's small hand. Gu Nianji pursed her lips in pain. Major General Hua. Hua Xiaoheng came back to his senses and quickly rubbed her hand. He held it to his mouth and blew on it. He said repeatedly, Does it still hurt? I'm sorry I couldn't control my strength. From the corner of her eye, Gu Nianji saw that Lu Jin was laughing so hard that only his teeth could be seen. She felt even more embarrassed. She snatched her hand back and said angrily, Let me finish. Okay, go ahead, I'll listen. Hua Xiaoheng took a step to the side and crossed his legs, but one arm was resting on the back of the sofa behind Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji put her soft and fair fingers to her lips and said thoughtfully, That's what I'm thinking. They won't let us have a peaceful wedding anyway. Why don't we take advantage of this and turn them around? Hua Xiaoheng's heart skipped a beat and he said with a smile, How can you be sure that they won't let us have a peaceful wedding? Do you still need me to say it? They've been plotting for so many years but they're still safe and sound. They can still continue to cause trouble. You know how confident they are and how arrogant they are about their abilities. Gu Nianji scoffed. It's time to teach them a lesson. Not only do they know why flowers are so red but they also know how flowers grow. Lu Jin listened with great interest. Without waiting for Hua Xiaoheng to speak, he interrupted and asked. We also want them to know how flowers grow. How can we let them know? Isn't that more difficult? It's not difficult. Of course we just have to uproot them. Gu Nianji made a gesture of plucking grass. She raised her chin slightly and looked at Hua Xiaoheng sideways. What do you think? Major General Hua, do you dare to use your own wedding to set up a trap to lure them out? Hua Xiaoheng closed his eyes and thought to himself, had this little girl already become a spirit? How did she know what he was planning? What was even more infuriating was that he had already planned to give up, but she had actually made his heart burn with just a few words. She was indeed worthy of being the successor personally chosen by Speaker Long of the Senate. With this kind of sharp insight into people's hearts and the eloquence to bring a dead person back to life, it would be a waste not to be in the Senate. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Hua Xiaoheng said calmly, You're quite ambitious, but don't you want to have a unique, perfect, and pure wedding? This is the only wedding you'll ever have in your life. I don't want you to have any regrets. Gu Nianji's heart warmed when she heard this. She smiled at Hua Xiaoheng, and her little fingers quietly hooked around his fingers. Gu Nianji quickly smiled and said softly, Of course I want to, but can I just think about it? Would those people let go of such a good opportunity? Especially since Kevin and Zhuo Qinghong just died in our hands. They must be furious, right? Of course they're furious, Hua Xiaoheng said softly. Hua Xiaoheng said softly, Not only are they furious, but they also used a lot of their inside men to create obstacles for us. Now that they've been eliminated, I think they're going crazy. But they haven't been completely eliminated, so as long as the mastermind is still around, these people will be like leeks in spring. There will be more after one batch is cut. Gu Nianji pursed her lips. Also, I have a feeling that the mastermind knows our situation very well. He's not a country, nor is he an organization. He should be a person, even if he has the power of a country or an organization to mobilize people. He's indeed a very powerful opponent. Hua Xiaoheng held her hand and kissed it. I feel the same way. I also think it should be a person and we should have met this person before. Gu Nianji's eyes widened. We've met. Oh, you know who it is? Hua Xiaoheng shook his head. Unfortunately, I can't remember everyone who has passed by me in my life. Gu Nianji looked away speechlessly. Then why did you say you've met him? If I had met him, I would definitely remember him. She pointed at her head. This is the memory of the camera. It doesn't have to be someone you've met. Hua Xiaoheng was amused. You were only 2 years old 18 years ago and you only came here 8 years ago. Don't think so much. Then do you agree? Gu Nianji shook Hua Xiaoheng's arm, unable to hide the excitement in her eyes. I really want to give it a try. Whenever I think about making those people suffer at our wedding, I want to put my hands on my hips and laugh out loud. Hua Xiaoheng, girl, you have a very strange way of laughing. Gu Nianji saw that Hua Xiaoheng was non-committal, so she continued to encourage him. Besides, I think this would be a unique, perfect and pure wedding for you and me. I can't be the only one who thinks it's unique, perfect and pure. Only when both of us think so can it be a wedding that belongs to us. Hua Xiaoheng never knew that it would feel so good to have a telepathic connection with someone. Although he never cared whether others could understand him or not, when such a person really existed, he understood why philosophy said that humans were social animals. This was because humans were born to desire to be understood and to be able to communicate with each other. He was completely honest in front of Gu Nianji. Nianji, this was my initial idea. I wanted to use our wedding to do something and lure out the mastermind. But General Ji told me. He said that I can't let you down. What you want is a pure wedding, not something mixed with my work and mission. I thought about it again and again, and felt that what he said made sense, so I changed my mind. Gu Nianji understood, and her large eyes were filled with understanding and understanding. This is the topic that you changed your mind about before? Hua Xiaoheng nodded. Yes, I thought it through. If you want to get married, then get married. Don't get involved in so many other things. But you convinced me again. Yes, even if we want to have a pure wedding, the mastermind won't agree. Gu Nianji snorted coquettishly. So, who needs his permission? Who does he think he is? I have the final say in my wedding. If I say I want to dig a hole at the wedding, he has to jump in obediently. Her nimble and graceful appearance was so delicate that he wanted to love her fiercely. Hua Xiaoheng tugged at the button on his collar and felt a little hot. Okay, you dig the hole and I'll help you shovel the soil. Hua Xiaoheng held her hand and pressed his head against hers. He smiled and said, after all, it's a once-in-a-lifetime wedding. We have to dig this hole well. Lu Jin watched with interest as Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng pulled at each other as if he didn't exist. He didn't feel awkward or angry. Instead, he was very happy. He finally saw the other side of Hua Xiaoheng when he was with his girl. As an old father who had worked hard for his girl's lifelong happiness, he could finally relax a little. As he listened, he couldn't help raising his hand and saying, actually, it doesn't matter. Who said that our Nianji will only have one wedding in her life? She's my girl. She can have as many weddings as she wants. It's not a problem. Hua Xiaoheng, she can have as many weddings as she wants? Does she still want to marry someone else? Hua Xiaoheng tilted his head to look at Lu Jin, his eyes cold. As long as she wants to. Lu Jin shrugged. As a father, I don't mind, so don't mind. The veins on Hua Xiaoheng's forehead popped out. Of course a father wouldn't mind, but how could a husband not mind? Hua Xiaoheng's expression darkened. He said, don't worry. As long as I'm here, Nianji won't have a second wedding. What if you're gone? You're 10 years older than my girl and scientifically speaking, women live 10 years longer than men on average, so. Lu Jin was about to start popularizing the longevity index of different genders. Gu Nianji quickly changed the topic. Dad, do you think the mastermind will definitely come to our wedding to cause trouble? If we want to prevent it, can we? Lu Jin's attention was distracted again. He thought about it and said, in terms of probability, the probability of this mastermind attacking your wedding is about 80%. Only 80%? Gu Nianji didn't hide her disappointment. I thought it was at least 99%. You think too much. Lu Jin waved his hand. And with the help of the Book of Changes and Chaos Mathematics, the possibility is actually lower. Because the Book of Changes and Chaos Mathematics are based on the objective foundation of eliminating human emotions, and they point you in the right direction. Therefore, if they listen to the choices of the Book of Changes and Chaos Mathematics, the possibility of them causing trouble will be lower. That's not bad either. Gu Nianji quickly stopped hesitating and said happily, if they choose not to make a move, then I'll have a perfect wedding. If they do, I'll have a one-of-a-kind wedding. So no matter what they do, I won't lose anything. This is today's second update, Chapter 2157, You Can Endure, I Can't. I am Master Rashi, Alliance Master. September's reward of 100,000 Qidian coins has arrived. Today it was delivered at midnight as usual. At 9 o'clock in the evening of the third watch. Today is the last day of the double monthly votes. Hurry up and vote if you have a monthly ticket. Chapter 2172. Wu Xiaoheng didn't know what to say. After a while, he held her hand and said, I can't believe you can think that way. You're really enjoying yourself. Of course. You have to think positively about everything. Anyway, it's one day to be happy and one day to be unhappy. Why not let yourself be happy? Gu Nianji grimaced and looked at Lu Jin. Looks are born from the heart. I still want to stay young forever. Right, Dad? Is there any scientific basis? Lu Jin nodded abruptly. Of course, of course. Do you know why couples look more and more alike? It's because humans can't help but learn each other's words and actions. Unconsciously, their words and expressions will become more and more alike. Although facial features are determined by genes and won't automatically change, the trend of wrinkles can indeed be controlled by oneself. They might even learn from each other's strengths to make up for their weaknesses. So you'll find that if the difference in looks between a couple is large, then the person with the higher looks will gradually become less good-looking. And the person with the lower looks will become more and more good-looking. This is learning from each other and learning from each other. This is also why I've always believed that marriage is the happiest when it's a match of social status. This match of social status not only refers to acquired indicators such as economic ability and social status, but also innate indicators such as personal genes and looks. In short, an unequal marriage is unhappy. Even looks need to be equal. Otherwise, would you be willing to have your looks lowered? It's really going to happen. Hu Xiaoheng interrupted Lu Jin's whimsical thoughts and said lightly, Uncle Lu, marriage is a matter between two people. It's fair to exchange what you have for what you don't have. Lu Jin tilted his head and thought for a moment. He nodded and said, that's true. A person with high looks but poor economic and social conditions will marry a person with low looks but good economic and social conditions. It's not a social climb, but a price for her looks in exchange for economic and social conditions. You'll get what you ask for. After saying that, he sighed emotionally and said, fortunately, the two of you don't have this problem. You two are equally good-looking. Even if you learn from each other's faces, it will be a win-win situation and both of you will look better and better. As for economic and social conditions, my girl is no worse than you. She's even a little better than you, but it's just so. Hu Xiaoheng. Although Gu Nianji was often praised by Lu Jin and was already used to it, it was still too outrageous today. She blushed and whispered, Dad, stop bragging. I can't catch up to Hu Xiao in terms of social status. As for her financial status, she didn't even dare to mention it. She was afraid that she would agitate Lu Jin and he would come up with some unimaginable way to earn money. Why can't I compare? Lu Jin glared at her. Girl, can you be a little more promising? You are the successor chosen by Speaker Long. In the future you will be the chairman of the Senate. What about him? At most, he could reach General Ji's position, right? Aren't we on equal footing? The corners of Gu Nianji's mouth twitched. She still wanted to speak, but Hu Xiaoheng secretly squeezed her hand. She immediately shut her mouth. Hu Xiaoheng smiled. Uncle Lu is right. In terms of social status, we are indeed on equal footing. I'm not even as good as Nianji. Ah, it's good that you admit it. My girl doesn't mind letting you take advantage of her. Lu Jin stood up proudly. Alright, you two can discuss the wedding. If there's anything you need my help with, just let me know. I'm going to design my smart robot nanny. With that, he excitedly pushed open the study door and rushed out. He didn't want to stay for a moment. Gu Nianji knew that Lu Jin had rushed out because he wanted to give her and Hu Xiaoheng some space to spend time together. She snuggled into Hu Xiaoheng's embrace and muttered, although my dad has interpersonal disorder, he's never been inconsiderate to me. Hu Xiaoheng remembered what she had just said. Women live 10 years longer than men on average. He pursed his lips and decided not to argue with her. He patted Gu Nianji on the back and said gently, it's not that Uncle Lu doesn't understand. He probably feels that there's no need to consider anyone other than you. Don't say that. My dad is really sick. I'll supervise him to take his medicine. Gu Nianji also remembered what Lu Jin had said to make Hua Xiaoheng worry. She quickly stroked his chest with her hand and soothed his breathing up and down. Hua Xiaoheng's entire body tensed up from her hand. He had no choice but to pick her up and go back to the bedroom to soothe his breathing. In a villa in the imperial capital, a woman sat in a dark room. She watched the live broadcast of the Senate's questioning over and over again, and her expression grew colder and colder. Kevin was dead. He was actually dead. How could he be dead? How many times had she used the Book of Changes to set up divinations, and how many times had she used chaos mathematics to calculate? All of them showed that Kevin was in Huaxia Empire, and there was a high chance that nothing would happen to him. Even if something happened with his background and identity as well as her ability and power as a backer, he would definitely be able to get Kevin out. The probability of something really happening was so small that it was negligible. Otherwise, why would she have sent Kevin to Huaxia Empire? So where was the variable? Where was the variable that made the extremely small probability of something happening? She closed her eyes and gripped the front of her shirt tightly with her hands. She felt like she couldn't breathe and the expression on her face was distorted. Kevin's accident had not only dealt a huge emotional blow to her, but it had also dealt a heavy blow to her professional abilities. This was the capital that she had relied on to survive. How could it have gone wrong? After a long time, so long that the sky outside was already dark, she finally lifted a corner of the curtain to take a look. The trees outside were very dense, blocking out the sun and the stars and moon in the night sky. She let out a long sigh and turned on the light. Looking at the tea room she had set up, she took out a straw stick again and began to use the Book of Changes to do divination. A few minutes later she got the divination, a negative divination. Negative divination, heaven above the earth. Divination, not a bandit, not a gentleman's chastity, big or small. She flipped through the divination and did not speak for a long time. Coming out of the tea room, she washed her hands, sat in the dining room and ate alone. Under the pale light, her thin figure looked very lonely. After eating, when she was sipping her poo or tea, her middle-aged servant woman came over to clean up the dishes and chatted with her. "Madam, you have to restrain your grief and accept fate. Mr. Kevin's revenge is waiting for you." The woman nodded as if she had the desire to talk and said softly, "I just did a divination." "What divination did you get? Is there progress on revenge?" The middle-aged servant woman's eyes lit up, and she stopped what she was doing. The woman frowned slightly and said, "Negative divination." "Negative?" "Yes, the divination is, not a bandit, not a gentleman's chastity, big or small." The middle-aged servant woman looked confused. "Madam, I don't understand." The woman smiled, lowered her head to take a sip of tea and said lightly, "The meaning of this divination is that people's travel is blocked, which is not good for a gentleman who sticks to the right path, and it is not good for him to do big things. But from a small point of view he can still set off a storm." It was just in line with what she was doing because she had never been a gentleman who sticks to the right path. In her opinion, this divination was for the benefit of the small, and not for the gentleman. This was today's third update from the Alliance Master. Chapter 2158, If You're Not Happy You Should Be Happy. He had sent an update to Frost Iron Grace Guild Master when he was promoted to Guild Master in July last year. Today it was delivered at midnight as usual. Today is the last day of the double monthly votes. Hurry up and vote if you have a monthly ticket. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of the fastest updated website. M. Chapter 2173. After winter was gone, the temperature gradually rose. March passed in the blink of an eye, and early summer in April arrived quickly. It was the evening of the weekend again. The sunset filled the sky, and the trees along the roadside grew tender green leaves. It wasn't to the point of covering the sky yet, but it was already slender and graceful. Gu Nianji led the short-legged dog, Aku, and jogged on the sidewalk. Wearing camouflage sportswear, she shuttled between the green leaves. Her slender, fair legs were like a running deer, and even her big watery eyes were like the bright eyes of a deer. They were big and pure and looked completely harmless. Of course, everyone who knew her knew that this was just an illusion. Her combat ability wasn't something those naive and stupid deer could compare to. Little Aku hadn't walked with Mama for a long time, and she was so excited that she almost went crazy. When she saw someone walking over, she would pounce and sniff around. If they didn't sniff, she would bare her fangs and brandish her claws to show the little claws on her short legs. However, her legs were too short and couldn't support such difficult movements, so she always accidentally fell to the ground. She got up and shook her fur. It was another good dog. Gu Nianji still had to tug hard on the dog leash, otherwise she would really be dragged into the dog. Because the weather was good, there were many people who came out for a walk after dinner in the Special Operations Forces headquarters compound. Seeing Gu Nianji stumbling along with a short leg, everyone couldn't help but laugh and fight to greet her. "Chief Gu, are you walking the dog?" Gu Nianji nodded and flashed the dog leash in her hand. "Good evening, Chief Gu." "Good evening." Gu Nianji smiled. "Have you had dinner, Chief Gu?" Gu Nianji made an okay gesture. "I've eaten. The orderlies made dinner today, and it's not as delicious as Major General Hua's." "Chief Gu, your camouflage sportswear looks really good, but I look at your sports shorts. I look a little awkward." Gu Nianji's big eyes narrowed into slits as she smiled. "You can tell? These are Major General Hua's camouflage pants. I cut them into sports shorts." "Ch. Don't tell him." Everyone looked at the fluttering threads on the side of the shorts and shifted their gazes in unison. She smiled and led little Aku along the sidewalk of the Special Operations Forces headquarters to the empty field in front of Hua Xiaoheng's office building. She ran a few laps around the track on the side of the field before stopping, panting. She used the snow-white towel hanging around her neck to wipe the sweat from her forehead. She let go of little Aku's leash, and little Aku rushed towards the door of Hua Xiaoheng's office building like an arrow. Unfortunately, he was blocked at the door. Of course, dogs were not allowed to enter this building. Poor Aku had been thrown into a military dog training camp by Hua Xiaoheng for a year, causing it to have cognitive impairment. It had always thought that it was a military dog and especially liked to listen to orders. That was why it always persisted in pouncing on the building, wanting to carry out its mission like the other military dogs. Gu Nianji followed behind him, laughing so hard that she doubled over. She held onto her knees and hugged her waist as she panted loudly at the door. When Hua Xiaoheng walked out of the office building, he saw a short-legged dog lunging at him like an arrow released from a bow. He instinctively dodged to the side. Chen Lai, who was walking behind him, was pounced on. He instinctively hugged the furry thing with his phone. When he took a closer look, he realized that it was Gu Nianji's pet corgi. He immediately wanted to throw it to the ground. However, the dog was like a spirit and refused to let go of his chubby neck. Chen Lai snorted and patted little Aku. "You like me so much, do you want to give me a heads up? By the way, Nianji, has your corgi been immunized?" Little Aku's ears immediately perked up. He straightened his legs in Chen Lai's arms and kicked hard. Chen Lai was caught off guard and staggered backward, almost falling to the ground. Little Aku took the opportunity to slip out of his arms and slip away. Hua Xiaoheng quickly walked to Gu Nianji's side and pulled her up. "Don't run so fast after eating. It's not good for your stomach." Gu Nianji obediently agreed and held Hua Xiaoheng's arm to stand beside him. She looked at Chen Lai and smiled. "Brother Chen, you can't even hide from Aku? This stinky dog is getting fatter and fatter. Try it? It'll flip you over if it pounces on you." Chen Lai glared at her and rubbed his waist. Gu Nianji cupped her hands and smiled. "Then I'll apologize on behalf of little Aku. Brother Chen is magnanimous. Our little Aku is still young." "Still young? It's already 2 years old, isn't it?" Chen Lai scoffed. "To a dog, 2 years old is considered an adult dog. I mean, it looks very small." Gu Nianji raised an eyebrow and deliberately argued with Chen Lai. Chen Lai was furious. "You're just trying to anger me on purpose. This kind of dog can only grow so big. How small can it be?" Gu Nianji laughed and circled around Hua Xiaoheng. She hid in the crook of his arm and made a face at Chen Lai. She looked like she was saying, "What can you do about me?" Chen Lai wanted to be angry, but when he saw Gu Nianji's infectious smile, he couldn't get angry. He chuckled as well. The three of them walked to Hua Xiaoheng's official residence together. The afterglow of the setting sun splashed out the last beautiful stroke. The sunset was like the last radiance of the setting sun. It was so beautiful that it elongated the shadows of the three of them. Gu Nianji looked back and sighed. "The weather is so good. I like evenings like this the most." She could almost smell the fragrance of grass in the air. Little Aku ran back and circled around the feet of the three of them. Because Hua Xiaoheng was around, little Aku didn't dare to run around without a leash. He obediently jumped up and down as if he was dancing a minuet. Chen Lai teased Aku and asked with a smile, "Does little Aku have to go on stage on your wedding day? After all, it's a gift from President Pushin's son." Gu Nianji, she would have forgotten if he hadn't mentioned it. Gu Nianji thought of the cute doll-like little boy and pursed her lips into a smile. When the time comes, Brother Chen will carry little Aku as his best man. Isn't that right, Major General Hua? Hua Xiaoheng nodded and said seriously, no problem. I'll get someone to make the same best man outfit for Aku when I get back. No way. Chen Lai wailed like a ghost and howled like a wolf. He wanted nothing more than to shut his mouth. Gun Yanji giggled. Her laughter was like a silver bell, crisp and moving. Hua Xiaoheng looked ahead with a smile. He thought about how the wedding was going to be held in 5 months, and the wedding dress hadn't been decided yet. Should he go to Europe with Nianji in a few days, or should he ask the European costume designer to fly here to try it on for her? The wedding venue was still under consideration. Previously there were 5 targets to choose from, but now it had been narrowed down to only 2. It was still up to Nianji to make the decision. The first batch of the guest list had just been released. Many leaders of other countries who wanted to attend had been eliminated, leaving only the heads of state of Huaxia and Russia. Those who had been politely rejected needed him to personally write a letter to express his gratitude and give them a set of the figurines he had prepared for the wedding. In addition, the wedding house and honeymoon were all in the midst of planning. He had to make it clear to Nianji that she shouldn't run around after work every day. There were many things that needed her to make decisions. Hua Xiaoheng had already made the entire plan in his mind. When he turned around, he realized that Gun Yanji had disappeared. He stopped in his tracks and cold sweat involuntarily broke out on his back. When he turned around, he finally let out a sigh of relief. It turned out that Gun Yanji was typing on her phone with her head down. He didn't know who she was chatting with. Hua Xiaoheng walked over and took a quick glance. He happened to see Gun Yanji replying to her WeChat moments. Under the WeChat moments where she had announced the official start of the wedding preparations, her old friend, the second-in-command of the Russian KGB Vladimir, had already liked and left a message. The second-in-command of the KGB Vladimir. Nianji, why didn't you send us an invitation for your wedding? The driver, Ivan, has already fainted from crying on the steering wheel. This was today's first update, Chapter 2159, Little Aku's same best man outfit. There were 2 updates today. The second update was at 9 o'clock in the evening. P.S. Thank you to Cold Iron Grace for the 200,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Thank you so much, big bosses and little angels. Genius. 1 second to remember this site's address. Mobile version, M. Chapter 2174. Gun Yanji's eyes curved into crescents as she quickly left a message under Vladimir's reply. Here I am, Gun Yanji, I sent an invitation to your boss. Won't you guys come along? Second brother of the KGB Vladimir, who's the boss? Here I am, Gun Yanji, your president. Doghead. JPG, second brother of the KGB Vladimir. Immediately after, the driver, Uncle Ivan, also left a message on Gun Yanji's WeChat moments. Last good driver of Blue Star, Ivan. Yanji, are you really not going to send me an invitation to your wedding? Second brother might be able to get a ride, but I'm just a driver. If you don't send me an invitation, I won't be able to go, ball. JPG. Then the driver sent a series of crying emojis that were about to flood his WeChat moments. Gun Yanji had actually prepared an invitation for them. She teased them for a while before replying, I just sent the invitation yesterday. Please check it. Welcome to my wedding. I'll be waiting for you. Second brother of the KGB Vladimir. Is this true? Yanji, you're the best. I'll love you forever. Last good driver of Blue Star, Ivan. Yanji, I knew you wouldn't forget us old friends. If possible, I want to take you on the red carpet. Second brother of the KGB Vladimir, replied to last good driver of Blue Star, Ivan, get lost. She has a biological father, and she wants a monster like you to take her on the red carpet. If it's possible, I'll be the one taking her on the red carpet. The driver, Ivan, saw that he was about to fight with his boss on the spot. Gun Yanji quickly replied to comfort the two of them. Remembrance, alright, calm down you two. I still have something I need your help with. Don't just think about fighting and forget about your job. Second brother of the KGB Vladimir. I suddenly remembered that I still have a report to write. Goodbye, Yanji. See you at the wedding. Vladimir is not online. Last good driver of Blue Star, Ivan? Yanji, Vladimir is lying to you. He never writes a report. Ever since Lena died in the line of duty, he has thrown everything to his subordinates. He probably won't be able to keep his position as second brother. Remembering here, after the chat ended, Gun Yanji looked up to see Hua Xiaoheng standing in front of her. He was also looking at her phone. Suddenly there was the shame of a public execution. Gu Nianji put away her phone nonchalantly and smiled. Why aren't you leaving? Waiting for you. Hua Xiaoheng turned and walked alongside her. Did you send them invitations yesterday? Gu Nianji smiled slyly and nodded. Yeah, aren't we going to muddy the waters? We have to put some bait out. Hua Xiaoheng glanced at her and smirked. You're putting out too much bait. I heard that the relatives of your university classmates also asked for invitations from the planning team? Yes, I heard that they want it. I just told them that the total number of invitations is limited, so they can distribute it among themselves. Even if it's a dog's head, it has to be voluntary, right? Gu Nianji's smile was almost identical to Hua Xiaoheng's. Qinlai was carried forward by little Aku, panting. He looked back and saw the two of them lagging far behind. He waved at them and shouted, What are you doing? Why aren't you leaving? We still have things to do tonight. In fact, it wasn't just the relatives of Gu Nianji's university classmates who had asked for wedding invitations in a roundabout way. There were also many people she knew and didn't know. Her subordinates in the Senate, her colleagues who had worked at the law firm back then, and even Jean Wani who had once fought against her in court, had all called her to congratulate her on becoming a bride. At the same time, they had also tactfully expressed their desire to attend her wedding. Gu Nianji knew Jean Wani's attitude very well. She had also been waiting for her to ask for an invitation. After tactfully declining a few times, Gu Nianji finally said, Lawyer Jean, you really think too highly of me. If you really want to attend, I'll ask my secretary to send you 2 invitations. May I know your mailing address? Although electronic invitations were also very convenient, Gu Nianji still chose paper invitations in order to muddy the waters. This was because paper invitations were easier to counterfeit than electronic invitations. Jean Wani had finally managed to convince Gu Nianji to relent. Of course, she wouldn't be picky about such trivial matters. She immediately gave her mailing address. After ending the call with Gu Nianji, she called Yi Xinyan's number again and said with a smile, Wuxi, I got 2 invitations. Yi Xinyan, who had been waiting in front of the phone, immediately said, I'll give you 5 million. Give me both invitations. Wuxi, these 2 invitations are hard to come by. They're only worth 5 million? If I attend in person, the connections I'll make can't be measured by 5 million. I can earn that much from a lawsuit now. Jean Wani said calmly. She had completely lost the shabbiness and cowardice of a fledgling. Yi Xinyan was feeling terrible, so she scolded her in a low voice. Then keep it for yourself. In the future, our company won't look for you anymore. Go find someone who can give you 5 million for a lawsuit. She hung up without hesitation as she spoke. Jean Wani froze. She was just asking for a sky-high price. The other party could just pay her back on the spot. She actually hung up without saying a word. She pouted and called Yi Xinyan's number again. She smiled apologetically and said, Wuqi, can't you even make a joke? Come on. 1 million for each invitation. Yi Xinyan deliberately thought about it for a while before pretending to be reluctant. Okay then. Compared to 5 million for 2 invitations, 1 invitation is still worth 1 million. Actually, Yi Xinyan knew very well that Jean Wani was right. Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng's wedding invitations were hard to come by in the entire Huaxia Empire. This was because the number of invitations was said to be fixed. If you had 1, others would have 1 less. Everyone wanted to attend in person because the VIP guests inside were too high profile. In addition to political leaders, there were also business celebrities. It was said that there were also celebrities who would sing and dance. The connections you could make, the friends you could make, and the exposure to the news around the world could immediately increase your assets and circle of friends to a whole new level. After settling the matter of the invitations, Yi Xinyan put away her phone and sat on the sofa under the thick, soundproof anti-radiation navy blue curtains. She propped her head on her hand expressionlessly. After a while, she got up and called her supervisor. I got an invitation. What orders does Madam have next? The person on the other end replied calmly, Madam has gone abroad. She's not in the country. Do as you see fit. Yi Xinyan was very surprised. Madam has gone abroad? When did that happen? Then our plan? The plan will proceed as planned. The voice on the other end sounded like a robot. There was no fluctuation at all. Now that Kevin and Zhu Qinghong are gone, the position on the Huaxia Empire side is vacant. If you perform well, we can consider you. Oh, really? Yi Xinyan was surprised and happy. This was like a pie falling from the sky. She knew about Kevin and Madam's relationship and had never thought of replacing him. Madam never keeps her word. 2 days later, Yi Xinyan received the invitation and immediately sent a copy to Yi Xinyan. Yi Xinyan saw the beige invitation with silver edges and narrowed her eyes slightly. How extravagant. She didn't look like the pitiful little orphan girl from back then who looked after the house for people at all. She could tell that the silver edges on the invitation weren't ordinary silver. They were made of a precious metal. Just this invitation alone cost several hundred yuan. Counting the number of invitations, it was already an astronomical figure. The entire wedding organized by a rich person was probably only worth the price of Gu Nianji's wedding invitation. Yi Xinyan's entire face contorted when she thought of this. When she was alone, her gentle and elegant mask was completely torn off. Hatred flowed unscrupulously in her heart. She felt that she had to do something. Otherwise she would really go crazy. On the television, the advertisement for Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng's wedding played over and over again. Under the vast green trees, the bride in a white veil looked back and smiled, like a forest elf slowly disappearing. In the lively and festive ancient courtyard, the bride in a traditional Huaxia red wedding dress had a wedding scarf over her head. She gracefully held the red silk as she stood with her back to the wedding hall. On the other end of the red silk was a handsome man in a military uniform. Only his back could be seen. However, his waist, legs and back were like a black panther ready to pounce. There was no need to look at his face. Just looking at his back was enough to make a woman want to die. Then came the wedding rehearsal scene. The elaborately decorated new house with a sea view and the congratulatory words from the leaders of various countries. It was like the Spring Festival Gala. All that was missing was a congratulatory message from the overseas Chinese. Yi Xinyan was enraged as she watched. She threw the remote control to the ground and smashed it into pieces. The television stopped abruptly and finally stopped being noisy. Yi Xinyan let out a long sigh, but her phone didn't let her go either. It started ringing. Looking down, she saw it was Do Ian calling. She swiped open her phone and answered the call. Ian, what's up? Do Ian didn't hide her jealousy. Wuxia, did you see the advertisement for Gu Nianji's wedding? Isn't it just getting married? It's like she's about to be crowned queen. I think her wedding is so high profile. She'll definitely have a miserable life after getting married. She cursed maliciously. She really couldn't feel better without doing this. She used to be the mud under her feet. She was just an orphan girl. How could she be compared to the Prime Minister's daughter? Didn't she still get to trample on her however she wanted? If it wasn't for her, Hua Xiaoheng would be my brother-in-law now. My pitiful sister died alone abroad, but she, on the other hand, is actually holding a wedding with great fanfare. How shameless can she be? Xinyan, do you know? Women like her who climb up from the bottom are the scariest. Because the more aggrieved she was in the past, the more domineering she is now. I won't attend her wedding. Am I going to give my face to her? Yi Xinyan sneered. You make it sound like you can go whenever you want. Do you have an invitation? If you don't, why are you blindly competing? This was today's second update. Chapter 2160, Madam never keeps her word. It's 2 o'clock today. Send a red packet to Zeb. Boss, I'll deduct it in October, read it and get promoted to guild master. Chapter 2175. Do Ian almost coughed up blood at Yi Xinyan's words. She threw her phone away and the crystal-clear sapphire screen smashed into the corner of the table, instantly shattering into pieces. She couldn't care less about her phone and howled at the sky in an attempt to vent the anger in her heart. Yi Xinyan's situation was no better than hers. She couldn't calm down in her room. She rushed out of the room with the car key and raced on the road outside. Only the speeding car could calm her unbalanced heart. The next day at work, Yi Xinyan had already returned to her usual calm demeanor as a witch. She was in her office preparing the documents for today's meeting. After a busy morning, she came out of her office to get a cup of coffee from the staff kitchen. However, as soon as she entered, she saw the young female staff surrounding the TV in groups of 2s and 3s, pointing at it enviously. Yi Xinyan glanced at it and saw it was another advertisement for Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng's wedding. No matter how calm she was, she couldn't help frowning. However, the young female staff didn't know how to restrain themselves and spoke louder and louder. Oh, Chief Gu is such a winner in life. Exactly. I've never seen a woman as happy as Chief Gu. She's tall, beautiful, excellent at her job, and holds a high position at such a young age. She even has a fiancé who's also in a high position. TSK, this fiancé's good looks, even a celebrity can't compare. Ha, I knew it. Only real handsome men don't want to be celebrities, not to mention he's a major general. Major General Hua Hihi. The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener did. Yi Xinyan felt like each sentence was a slap to her face. She was so angry that her hands trembled and trembled. A few drops of black coffee spilled out of the coffee cup and landed on her pure white work attire. It was glaring and ugly. Just like her life, it was supposed to be bright, but all it took was one small mistake and disaster befell her. She poured away the coffee in her hand in annoyance and walked out of the staff kitchen with a straight face. She returned to her office to grab her Hermes handbag and took out her phone to call her boss. "Victor, I'm not feeling well today. I need to take a few days off." Her boss had a good relationship with her, so she agreed without hesitation and reminded her to see a doctor if the condition worsened. Yi Xinyan felt a little better. She thanked her boss with a smile and left the company in a hurry. Back at her place, she took out a bottle of vodka, made a smoked salmon sandwich and ate it while she drank the wine. After eating, his head felt a little tipsy and a little dizzy. Only then did he feel a little better. She leaned against the chaise longue and took out her iPad to watch some videos to kill time. However, when she opened the video, she realized that it was still Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng's wedding advertisements. She felt suffocated. Although the world was big, she had nowhere to run. Isn't it just getting married? Does it have to be the same as the presidential election? Yi Xinyan smashed the iPad in her hand onto the ground, leaving a dent in the hard tiles. Only a corner of her iPad was damaged. Yi Xinyan sat on the chaise longue, holding her head and hugging her knees. Her other hand was clenched tightly. She planned not to watch TV or look at her phone for the next few days. Why don't she find a cruise ship and go out to sea for a few days? Internet access on a cruise ship was very expensive, and the signal was very poor. Perhaps she wouldn't have to hear Gu Nianji's disgusting name. She kept her word and immediately found a cruise agent she was familiar with. She called and said, "Are there any cruises that are going out to sea soon? I want to book a room." The person on the other end laughed happily and said, "Yes, Miss E. Our company has just launched the Huagu travel route. As long as you are a fan of Major General Hua and Chief Gu, we will automatically give you a 10% discount. Consider it our travel agency's token of appreciation for Major General Hua and Chief Gu's marriage." What the F***CK? Yi Xinyan was fuming and smashed her phone again. She had already smashed 3 phones in the past few days. She was extremely frustrated and didn't want to go out. She went to her bedroom to find sleeping pills, took one and had a good night's sleep. The publicity for Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng's wedding was really all-encompassing. Gu Nianji herself was too embarrassed to go to work. Fortunately, her and Hua Xiaoheng's faces had been blurred in the advertisements. Only their figures were clear. Her and Hua Xiaoheng's faces weren't well known for the time being. When they walked outside, people who weren't acquaintances wouldn't be able to recognize her and Hua Xiaoheng. However, it was precisely because they were acquaintances that they knew each other that she felt even more awkward. When she came back from work that night, she saw Lu Jin sitting in the dining room with a box of yogurt in his arms. He was looking at the wedding advertisement on the TV on the wall. Gu Nianji sat down opposite him and rubbed her temples. "Dad, do we really need to do this? It's been more than a month. It's been enough publicity. This is to psychologically stimulate the people who hate you and Xiaoheng the most. So we have to do it to the extreme. We have to be ostentatious and arrogant. Only then can we stimulate them and make them panic." The first wave of advertising was Lu Jin's idea. Of course, it was also mixed with his selfishness. He wanted the whole world to know that his girl was going to get married in a grand manner. Hua Xiaoheng also tacitly agreed because he also wanted the whole world to know that Gu Nianji was going to marry him. If anyone dared to have any ideas about her, they would have to think about Hua Xiaoheng behind her first. During dinner, Hua Xiaoheng's grandmother's Xie family also called from France to congratulate the two of them. At the same time, they asked when their invitations would arrive. Hua Xiaoheng had prepared an invitation, but he hadn't sent it to the Xie family yet. He didn't expect them to take the initiative to ask for it. Hua Xiaoheng smiled and said, "I was about to send it. Are you sending it to France?" The person who called was Hua Xiaoheng's uncle, Xie Beichen. He smiled and said, "Send it to New York in the United States. Our family is on vacation in New York. We plan to go straight to your place after our vacation and wait for the wedding." Before he hung up the phone, he said, "Our family can't leave for the time being. We'll give you a big gift abroad first." Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng didn't know what was going on at first, but a day later, Hua Xiaoheng's field agent in New York sent him a message saying that his and Gu Nianji's wedding advertisement had been placed in New York's Times Square. Of course, the male and female leads in the wedding advertisement that was placed abroad weren't Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng at all. They were just two professional actors with similar figures, and their faces had been blurred. Therefore, the Xie family bought 4 months of advertising time on the LCD screens around Times Square in New York City until the day of the couple's wedding. Not far from Times Square, there was a newly built high-rise residential area. In the penthouse of a building in the middle, a woman in a nightgown stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. She frowned as she looked at a large LCD screen facing her. What's going on over there? Is it Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng's wedding advertisement? A middle-aged servant bowed and said respectfully, "Yes, madam. Go to the management of the building over there and tell them that I don't want to see that advertisement. How much money will it take to remove it?" The middle-aged servant quickly went to make the call. After a while, she came back with a slightly surprised expression and said, "Madam, the management said that someone else bought the advertising time and paid a high price for 4 months. If you want to take it down, you have to pay double the fine." The madam's face was livid. She snorted coldly and said, "What a big show. Do you really think I don't exist?" This is the first chapter for today, chapter 2161, Do you think I don't exist? It's 2 o'clock today. The second update, Alliance Master, 9 p.m. P.S. Thank you to Zeb602 for tipping me 10,000 starter coins yesterday. Chapter 2176. The middle-aged servant had never seen the madam so angry before. She had always been gentle. She could easily turn her enemies into ashes. She also said that the most important thing for a woman was her posture. Even if she was defeated, she had to maintain her elegance and composure. She must not throw a tantrum or roll around like a small boat that couldn't bear the weight. Otherwise, she would be no different from a shrew in the market. But now, her face was ashen, the corners of her mouth curled downwards, and she was trembling continuously. Her cheeks were twitching, and the wrinkles on both sides of her nose were deeply revealed. She looked much older in an instant. The middle-aged servant couldn't help but remind, "Madam, do you want to try another divination?" The lady regained her senses and raised her eyes to look at the mirrors hanging everywhere in the house. When she saw her own ferocious face, she was shocked. She touched her face with her hands and gently patted it. After a long time, she said softly, "The Book of Changes cannot be used too frequently. I had just started a month ago, which was beneficial to me. I cannot start it again within half a year. Even if I were to start it again, it would be useless." "Oh, I see. Then would madam like to have some snacks and take a nap?" The middle-aged servant said attentively. The madam thought for a moment and nodded. "All right. Make me your best glutinous rice balls. Make them bigger. Make 2. The middle-aged servant bowed in response and hurriedly went to the kitchen. The lady sat back on the sofa and thought for a while. She got up and went to her room to pick up the VR helmet and glasses. She put them on and entered the large-scale game, The Life You Want. Life. She hadn't been here for a long time. She looked around. There weren't many pieces of equipment, but they were all of high quality. It was definitely different from when she first started the game. She was in a better mood and randomly picked a scene. She just wanted to go in and watch as a passerby to relax. When they entered, they saw the system broadcast on the window above their heads. Full member. Hello everyone, this game is meant to give you a real-life experience. Please don't use cheats. Please don't use cheats. Please don't use cheats. When this broadcast came out, the players were dumbfounded. Playing a daily life game with a cheat code? It's not like it's a PUBG game. Is there a need to be like this? The lady was also speechless. This kind of game was more about life. So what if there was a cheat? It wasn't like the system would let you earn a single cent more. The system didn't have such a setting. However, she soon realized that she was gravely mistaken. That was because she had used her system admin identity to find a scenario where someone was suspected to have cheats. She wanted to see what it was like to have cheats in this kind of game. There were many scenarios that were suspicious of the existence of the cheat. She chose one of them. It was a classroom in a university. She was standing in a very spacious lecture hall. A white-haired professor was lecturing on the podium. There were many students below the podium. Most of them were listening attentively, but there were also a few students who were doing their own things. This was also a common sight in ordinary universities. Even Harvard University, the world's #1 Ivy League university, had students who didn't listen in class. The lady sat down disapprovingly, intending to listen to a lesson to relax her nerves. After listening for a while, she realized that the professor was talking about biological and genetic science. On the blackboard was the gene editing diagram of the fruit fly. Right at this moment, a tall and handsome Asian man stood up and asked, "Professor Smith, may I ask if congenital genetic defects can be cured through gene editing?" The white-haired professor was wearing reading glasses. He lowered his head slightly and looked at the boy who was asking the question below the podium. He said, "It's possible in theory, but remember, it's only possible in theory. As far as gene editing is concerned to cure congenital genetic defects, it's possible in theory, but it's worlds apart from reality. From the current stage, the possibility is almost zero." What? We all know that theory guides practice. From practice we can summarize theory. Since it's already possible in theory, then it's possible in reality as long as we find the right method. For example, the man revealed a charming smile. "I know that you're a data person created by the system. As long as I can find your data, I can make a copy of you. This is much easier than gene editing. Isn't that right, Professor Smith?" The white-haired professor didn't seem to realize that someone would ask this question. He was stunned and stood on the podium. After a while he said, "I'm not a data person." There were NPCs and ordinary players among the students listening to the lecture. When they heard this, they all raised their heads and looked at the boy who stood up in surprise. Some of the busybodies had already started hitting the tables and benches. They even stuck their hands into their mouths and whistled. It was very lively. The white-haired professor was still seriously refuting that person. "I'm not a data person. I'm a biology professor." However, he had only said a few words when the boy who stood up suddenly reached out and tapped in the air a few times. Real players could see that he had brought up the control panel on the VR mirror and was selecting the conditions. A few minutes later, a person who looked exactly like the white-haired professor on the podium suddenly pushed open the door of the classroom and walked in. Then a second, a third, a fourth, more and more white-haired professors walked in. Not only was the podium crowded, but even the empty space in the lecture hall was filled with white-haired professors. The scene looked slightly strange. The madam looked at all of this and frowned. Was this the cheat code? Can't the system just clear the ban and delete the account? And even broadcast it to the entire station? These computer programmers who do system maintenance these days are really lousy. She was about to open the control panel and exit the game when she suddenly realized that something was wrong. Because she couldn't bring up the control panel. In the VR window, the small circle on the upper right corner that showed the loading progress kept spinning, but she couldn't bring it up. What's going on? The madam thought for a while and suddenly understood. She sucked in a breath of cold air. The door of the classroom was still being pushed open, and a steady stream of white-haired professors kept pushing open the door. They indeed looked exactly the same. Even the direction and arc of the wrinkles on their faces were the same. This was a copy and paste. How could there be any difference? The white-haired professor was the core of this scene. Although he was an NPC, this teaching scene was set up because of him. And the system kept duplicating white-haired professors, which took up a lot of resources. Just like the macro virus that appeared in Excel, it instantly sent you into an endless loop. Other than the constant repetition, this kind of large-scale duplicating boss-type NPC also took up a lot of CPU resources. The lady felt that she could hear the computers in the large computer rooms operating more and more crazily. If one computer didn't have enough CPU, another computer's CPU could be made up for as soon as possible. This was originally the principle of the system's database complementing each other to distribute the system's stress capacity. But here, this principle was being used in reverse. Gradually, the computer's CPU that was scattered in other computer rooms were also occupied. And the white-haired professor's copy and paste did not stop. The large lecture hall was filled with people. At a glance, it looked like a sea of white hair. The normal student players and student NPCs were almost drowned in the sea of white hair. Stop. Stop. Stop duplicating. Some players were frightened by this strange scene, but just like the lady, he couldn't get out. He could only watch as he was squeezed until he couldn't breathe. Just when everyone felt that their hearts were about to burst, the system finally reached the edge of self-preservation. Scene 03045612 has a fatal bug, it can't be fixed. System forcibly deleted, system forcibly deleted, system forcibly deleted. Finally, the game's programmer activated the ultimate protection method after other methods failed, unplugging the power supply. In the distant control room, the programmers cursed. How many times has this happened this month? Our scenario is almost completely destroyed. The previous code can't be used. Once it's used, it repeats the bug. I really don't know which big shot made this cheat. It's practically destroying the world. The game's chief engineer looked at the black screen in front of him. After a long time he murmured, "Do you guys think that the cheat that person used looks familiar?" Familiar what? His duplication mode is to put rice on the chessboard, and the next square is the second square of the previous square. Also, the chessboard has limits but our system has no limits. So, his duplication can be instantaneous and endless, using all of our CPU. Then what are the others playing? Let him play by himself. The chief engineer slammed his fist on the computer table. The youngsters around him looked at each other and suddenly felt a little excited. Boss, could it be that person? Who? The middle-aged chief engineer, who was in his 40s, shouted. Tell me clearly who. Pink Piggy. Pink bubbles almost popped out of the young programmer's eyes. This year is the year of the pig. Is the Pink Piggy making a comeback? This was the second major chapter of the day, Alliance Masters Additional Update, Chapter 2162, Please Don't Use Cheats. It's 2 o'clock today. He sent a message to Frost Iron Grace, the big boss of the main guild, October deduct red again, to promote him to a guild leader. Genius 1 second remember site address. Mobile version, M. Chapter 2177. Pink Piggy? The middle-aged chief engineer hissed as if he had a toothache. No way? How long has it been since the last time the Pink Piggy appeared? Why would it suddenly appear in our game and cause trouble? The codename Pink Piggy was completely unknown to most people. But in the eyes of the top programmers and international hackers, it was a godlike existence. Although the German Federal Intelligence Service had never directly admitted it, there were already rumors circulating in the circle that the Pink Piggy had once single-handedly dug up the ancestral grave of the German Federal Intelligence Service. Do you remember the last time the Pink Piggy appeared? It was doing a righteous thing. Why would it have nothing better to do than to cause trouble in our game? Some people weren't sure and muttered in a low voice. Yeah, do you remember? The last time the Pink Piggy made a public appearance was 2 years ago when our country was engaged in a cyber war with the United States. It suddenly appeared and led the hackers of China who brought their own food to fight a beautiful turnaround battle with the United States. Why would such a Pink Piggy make life difficult for us? It brought us huge economic losses. If we can catch this troublemaker, we can go to court and sue him. Someone said indignantly. No one could feel good watching their blood, sweat, and tears being broken down and eaten away at a geometrical speed. Thinking about it this way, it didn't seem like it was the Pink Piggy's doing. But other than it, who else could be so powerful? The young programmer who had just called it the Pink Piggy refused to give up on his intuition. He pointed at the computer screen and said, "Look at it yourself. Among the top programmers and hackers, you know who has this kind of ability. What's the difference between this and when it single-handedly destroyed the intranet of the German Federal Intelligence Service? Even the logic used is the same. The person sitting next to him was used to bickering with him. Chessboard theory isn't some profound theory. Everyone just knows it. The difficult part is how to apply it to a program. You say it's the Pink Piggy based on this? There's not enough evidence. It's just a guess. You have enough evidence, so who do you think did it?" The young man who was being bickered was anxious. He waved his fists and the two almost started fighting. Just when the control room of the game headquarters was in chaos, the madam was also pushed out of the game. Her expression was even worse than when she entered the game. This large-scale game was her cornucopia, and it was also her large-scale data collection site. Her chaos mathematics combined with the book of changes was impossible without the parameters provided by the game. But now someone else had stirred up a mess. Accidents happened one after another, causing huge financial losses to the company. This was the first time that the gaming company had a negative profit for this quarter. This couldn't go on. She returned to her study, turned on her computer, and called the executives of her company for a remote video conference. Of course, she never showed her face in the remote video conference. She always used an old lady's avatar to replace herself, and her voice was also altered. Therefore, the people in her company, even the executives, did not know her true identity. But this did not prevent her from exercising strict control over the company. We've called for an emergency meeting today to deal with the bugs that have recently appeared in the game. A voice that sounded rather old was transmitted from the computer into the headphones of the executives. Her voice simulation equipment was very sophisticated, and ordinary people would not be able to tell that her voice had changed. Therefore, when she spoke, everyone involuntarily sat up straight, showing respect for the elderly. The CEO who was in charge of the operation of the game said with shame, We've troubled you, we're currently looking for the cause. Why are you looking for the cause? Hurry up and find out who did it. The madam severely condemned their actions. If you can't solve the problem, you have to solve the problem. Don't you know such a simple method? When she said this, her executives hurriedly said, "We're already looking for who did it, but the other party seems to have come prepared. The login IP is very well hidden, and we haven't been able to find it until now. And every time he logs in, he destroys the main data of an important scene, so even if his login IP isn't hidden, we can't find out what his login IP is." That good? The madam frowned. There aren't many programmers or network hackers with this kind of ability in the world, right? If you use the exhaustive method to investigate one by one, there should be results in more than 2 months, right? At this time, the chief engineer in charge of game maintenance whispered, "We thought of someone today, but we have no evidence to prove it. It's just that his style of doing things is very similar. And in terms of his ability, if there really is such a person in this world who can do these things, it can only be him." "Who is it?" The madam raised her eyebrows. "Say it." "The pink piggy." When they heard that it was the pink piggy, everyone quieted down. The madam's eyes widened even more and she almost cried out, "What did you say? It's really the pink piggy?" She said it as if she knew who the pink piggy was. The executives were all experts at reading people's words and body language, and they were also experts at recognizing people from their voices. Although they couldn't see the madam's face, they could tell from her voice that she didn't seem to know nothing about the pink piggy. Everyone was quiet for a while, and one of the executives asked tentatively, "Madam, do you know this pink piggy?" The madam was confused, but she quickly calmed down and said, "I've heard of her. She's a very powerful person, but would she do such a thing now? She hasn't been out for a long time, right? He's always been elusive. Who knows, but I'm inclined to think that he didn't do this kind of thing. Because the pink piggy seems to be quite righteous, it's hard to imagine that he would do such a thing that harms the interests of others." As a game company, they had signed various contracts with players, which clearly stated that using cheats was against the game's rules. But the problem was that even if you caught a player using cheats, the only punishment was to delete his account. There was no precedent for taking it to court. And if the other party was powerful, they would directly say that there was a bug in the game program and it had nothing to do with cheats. The madam quietly listened to everyone's lively discussion and finally said, "You still have to strengthen the surveillance. You have to react immediately if there's a problem. I hope that at the next meeting, you can tell me who the perpetrator is in reality." The remote video conference ended. The madam turned off the computer screen and sat alone in the dark. She thought with a blank expression, could it really be the pink piggy? But wasn't she busy getting married now? Her wedding advertisements were everywhere, and they had even reached her doorstep in New York. This is the first chapter for today, chapter 2163, Solving the Problem Maker. It's 2 o'clock today. The second watch, Alliance Master De Jong, was added at 9 p.m. P.S. Thanks to Zeb602 for tipping me 50,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Chapter 2178. She really had nothing better to do. Did she really think she could get married comfortably? In the darkness, the madam smiled sinisterly, a far cry from her usual gentle and courteous image. Her fingers gripped her phone tightly, thinking that even if Gunyenji got married in secret, she wouldn't let her off easily, let alone publicly. The only thing they had in common was whether Gunyenji wanted to suffer in private or in front of the whole world. She stood up and walked to the balcony. Lighting a lady's cigarette, she took a long drag and blew out white smoke rings. Narrowing her eyes, she planned her next move. After a while, she swiped open her phone and called the staff she had left in the Wuxia Empire. The moment the call connected, her expression and tone had quickly changed. She was no longer gentle and kind, but cheerful with a hint of boldness. She was like a chivalrous woman from ancient times who enforced justice on behalf of the heavens, making people feel a sense of submission. She smiled and said, "Little E, how's the company? I'm going to the Wuxia Empire tomorrow. Send someone to pick me up." It was Yi Xinyan who answered the phone. Yi Xinyan was overjoyed when she realized that the madam was calling her personally. In front of the madam, she had always been inferior to Kevin, who had been with the madam since he was a child. But now that Kevin was gone, it was finally her turn to be number one in front of the madam. Yi Xinyan could almost imagine her meteoric rise in the years to come. Deep down, she actually didn't like Kevin. Kevin had become the vice president of a large international company at such a young age because of the madam's backing. In front of her, he was pretending to be a big-shot senior elite. The distance between her and Kevin was only lacking a madam. After hanging up, she received a few code words from the madam. Putting on the VR helmet and glasses, she entered the game. The madam's real instructions were to be in a certain scene in the game. After she solved the code, she entered the game and was inspired by the scene to know what the madam really wanted her to do. They had never failed this method of communication. In the real world outside, whether it was sending instructions by email or exchanging information face-to-face on the street, the possibility of being targeted by the Special Operations Forces was too high. It was the safest to hand over information in the virtual world of a large-scale online game. Everything in the virtual world was virtual anyway. She could have as many scenes as she wanted. Even if the Special Forces chased her into the game, they wouldn't be able to find out which small world she was hiding in. Yi brought up the control panel, tapped a few times and entered the game. According to Madam's code, she entered a small bar in Havana, the capital of Cuba. An old Indian woman sat in the tavern, wearing a large shawl of rich colors and geometric patterns. She looked at her with a sad face. She was an NPC. If you spoke to her, you would be able to obtain the next step of the plan. Yi sat down in front of her and asked, "What kind of wine are you drinking? Can I have a drink?" The old Indian woman said sadly, "I brewed it myself. When my daughter was born, I brewed it for her to serve the guests at her wedding." After saying that, tears flowed from her eyes. Yi raised an eyebrow. "This is a good thing. Why are you crying?" The old Indian woman wiped her tears with her hand and slowly began to sing the morning song. "My beloved daughter. She's dead. She died at the wedding beside her groom. The wedding has become a funeral. Everyone is crying. Those who love you and those who hate you are gone. Only death can end love." Her tone was sad and sorrowful, and the wrinkles on her face crisscrossed like ravines. Just looking at her and listening to her song, most people would be infected and cry. However, the more Yi listened, the more excited she became. She almost laughed out loud. She received Madam's instructions for the next step of the plan. That was great. Madam was finally going to make a move. To be honest, for the past 2 months, being bombarded by Gu Nianji's ubiquitous wedding advertisements day and night had already escalated from psychological stimulation to physical attack. Her disgust for Gu Nianji had developed into a physical revulsion. This kind of disease could only be cured by death. In other words, between the two of them, one of them only needed to die. Yi exited the game and was in high spirits. She cheerfully hummed a song, "I'm going to marry you tomorrow." She danced briskly into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of red wine. Holding it up to the empty kitchen, she smiled and said, "Happy wedding." She winked, not hiding her malice at all. The evening lights were first lit, and the imperial capital was shrouded in a faint layer of twilight. Standing on the steps of the Senate building and looking over, there was a sense of blurriness in the world of mortals. Gu Nianji only took a glance before looking away. She looked at the tall and handsome man standing at the bottom of the steps, leaning against the car door with both hands in his trouser pockets. Wuxiao took a minute out of his busy schedule to pick me up. I'm really flattered. Gu Nianji flew down like a little bird and threw herself into Hua Xiaoheng's arms. Hua Xiaoheng gently patted her waist. "You're my concubine. I'm not the emperor. Aren't you worried that I'll be jealous?" As he spoke, he opened the car door and held her head to get her in. Gu Nianji smiled. "Why would I? You're the emperor. You're my emperor alone." She put his hand on the steering wheel. "Hurry up and drive. I'm hungry." Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. "Do you think I'm the emperor? Do you think I'm the chef?" He stepped on the gas and the black SUV roared as it sped away. "That's not contradictory. My emperor is my chef and my chef is my emperor." It fully reflects the simple class mentality that food is the most important thing for the people. Wuxiao, don't look down on the emperor and the chef. You're so difficult to deal with and you won't be able to get a wife. Gu Nianji said seriously, but her eyes flashed with a teasing light. Hua Xiaoheng smiled and rubbed her head. "You're getting more and more eloquent. Putting you in the Senate is like catching a mouse in a rice jar, right? Nonsense. I'm clearly a cat. A cat. You know? I'm intimidating the rats in the Senate." Gu Nianji waved her little fist in protest. Hua Xiaoheng chuckled. "Okay, little kitten." When he leaned over to fasten her seat belt, he kissed her on the cheek. Gu Nianji kissed him back and went home with him. The person behind them, who was watching them with a high-powered remote camera, chuckled. "Damn it. What a newlywed couple. Even driving a car can be so sweet." "That's right. I'm sick of it." I don't know what they talked about, but if that woman smiled at me like that, I would give my life to her. I'll kill whoever wants her life. The person beside him put away the high-powered remote camera and said expressionlessly, "You're the one who wants her life. Do you not want to live anymore?" The person who was mocked chuckled and rubbed his chin. "I'm just saying. It's just an example. Don't mind the details." This was the second chapter for today, chapter 2164, Physiological Disgust. It's 2 o'clock today. It's a little urgent in the morning, so I'll write a big chapter tomorrow. Genius 1 second. Remember site address. Mobile version, M. Chapter 2179. He didn't expect the man to glare at him disdainfully again. You make it sound like you can really succeed if you don't care about the details. Why don't you look in the mirror? Can you beat the bodyguards around her? Do you know which bodyguards are hiding behind her other than the bodyguards on the surface? The expression of the person being mocked changed. He subconsciously looked around and saw that there was no one around. He patted his chest and said, "Take your photos well. The person who pays has the final say when to make a move. I don't want you to complain." The two of them argued for a while. When they looked up, they saw that Gu Nianji and her fiancé Hua Xiaoheng's car had already disappeared. They put away the high-powered remote camera and sent a message for the people in front to continue taking photos. When Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng returned to the official residence at the headquarters of the Special Operations Forces, it was already dark. Gu Nianji pushed open the car door and got out. She smiled and shook her head. She stood at the door and waited for Hua Xiaoheng to go in together. The guard at the door raised his hand and saluted. "Hello, Chief." Hua Xiaoheng nodded slightly. "Thank you for your hard work." He held Gu Nianji's hand and walked all the way to the living room before putting her down. Lu Jin stood in front of the sofa with a smile and said, "You're finally back. Can we have dinner now?" Gu Nianji quickly said, "Dad, do you want to play with me tonight?" Lu Jin shook his head and winked at her. "I have something more fun to do. You can play by yourself. It's just a game. You don't need me to accompany you, do you?" "Okay." Gu Nianji walked over regretfully and asked curiously, "Dad, what's more fun to do?" Lu Jin raised his chin at Hua Xiaoheng. "Helping your fiancé with a small program isn't worth mentioning." Gu Nianji, how could a small program that Lu Jin had personally written be worth mentioning if Hua Xiaoheng had asked for help? Even the stupidest person wouldn't believe it. Gu Nianji pursed her lips and muttered, "If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. Why are you trying to trick me?" She went back to her bedroom to wash up and change into loose and comfortable home clothes. She had dinner with Lu Jin and Hua Xiaoheng before returning to her suite and continuing to play the game. Ever since she used the programming logic that she used to wipe out the German Federal Intelligence Agency, she figured out a plug-in program and was practically invincible. During this period of time, she had made the managers and programmers of this large-scale game run around all by herself. She felt that she was the best. Putting on the VR helmet and glasses, she opened the control panel in front of her. "Where should we go today?" She carefully looked at the structure of the entire game. This game was divided into many levels, but to sum it up, it was divided into 2 big frames, space and time. Zhuangzi said, "The 4 directions form the universe from ancient times until now form the universe." In other words, the universe was the structure of space and the Eon was the structure of time. You constructed the space and time of the entire game at the same time. Every time Gu Nianji saw the core structure of the game, she would silently complain to herself. How ambitious. He wanted to be tolerant of all living things. But it was this ambition that inspired her to apply the chessboard theory again. And it was different from the last time she was in the German Federal Intelligence Agency. This time she was playing bigger. Why? Because the other party had given her a bigger framework. How widely her chessboard theory could be used depended entirely on the size of the space provided by the other party. That was truly how big the world was, as big as the heart. Since the other party was so arrogant as to use you as the game's framework, then when she turned on the plug-in, the speed and scale of replication would immediately be endless. To a single scene it would be completely devastating. To the entire system, it would also constantly eat away at the system's available CPU. In the end, it would cause a large number of system resources to be used and affect players in other scenes. It was like a virus that kept replicating crazily until the programmer had no choice but to unplug the power and restart. And when the other party unplugged the power and restarted, it triggered the hidden program of the system and embedded the bug into the source program. The entire scene would then be completely useless. Just like that, Gu Nianji destroyed the existing settings in the game one by one. Of course, there were many scenes in the game, so Gunyenji couldn't destroy them all at once. The scenes she destroyed were all the core parts of the game and also the scenes with the most players. And when an online game malfunctioned every day and couldn't be accessed, even the best game would make players tired. The loss of players day by day was what truly shook the foundation of the game. Without players, how were they going to make money? It wasn't a charity, so how could they possibly spend astronomical maintenance fees to keep the game running? Although Gunyenji hadn't seen the company's accounts, according to her big data estimates, the company should have turned profits into losses in the past month. She was in a great mood and smiled as she opened a scene. This time she chose a university in Sea City. 4 years ago she was released from the Special Operations Forces in Sea City by Wuxia. She passed the special entrance exam and directly skipped a year to enter Sea University's Faculty of Law as a junior and began her undergraduate career. There, she met her first group of good friends outside of the Special Operations Forces. Gunyenji smiled as she looked at the simulated Sea University dormitory. She chose a few NPCs and named them Green Tea Fong, Lady Chow, and Little Temptress. These 3 were her undergraduate roommates and took great care of her. After graduating, they didn't keep in contact much. It wasn't that they didn't want to contact Gunyenji, but Gunyenji had too many unspeakable secrets, so they gradually drifted apart. Now that the issue of her identity had been resolved, it was time to get closer to her undergrad classmates. Gunyenji happily wandered around the dormitory. She even named the dormitory after her dormitory number from back then. She lay on the dormitory bed, extremely relaxed, and laughed as she teased her 3 NPC roommates. Green Tea Fong, come and massage my legs. I'm tired. Green Tea Fong wore a stiff smile unique to NPCs as she squatted in front of her bed and began massaging her legs. Gunyenji smiled as she took her hand and teased, "Oh? Miss, your hands are so soft. Do you want to go back with me and have a good life?" The Green Tea Fong NPC didn't know how to respond to her conversation outside of the setting. She only repeated mechanically, "Hello, classmate. Classmate, do you need help? Classmate, have you eaten? Classmate, do you need to study at night?" Gunyenji teased her for a long time, but the NPC still repeated the same few words. "Trash game ruining my youth," Gunyenji muttered as she kicked the NPC. "Alright, get up and kneel." She then crooked her finger at the NPC Lady Chow. "Come, Lady Chow, we haven't seen each other in a long time. How have you been?" Although the 3 NPCs' responses were all irrelevant, she was still having a good time playing by herself. What she didn't know was that Hua Xiaoheng and Lu Jin had also logged into the setting. However, they had chosen to watch from the sidelines so Gunyenji couldn't see the 2 of them. When he found her playing by herself in the dormitory, Lu Jin's eyes couldn't help turning red. He clenched his fists and said to Hua Xiaoheng, "Did my girl play by herself? Didn't any of you accompany her?" Hua Xiaoheng, he wanted to say that this was a game and they weren't babysitters, but in the face of a father who loved his daughter dearly, he couldn't bring himself to say it. Lu Jin snorted. Just as he was about to cancel his spectator mode and walk in to play with Gunyenji, he suddenly saw a person walking over from the corridor at the entrance of the dormitory that Gunyenji had set up. This was a very ordinary-looking girl. Lu Jin could tell at a glance that this person was not an NPC but a player. This is today's first chapter. Chapter 2165, Trashy Games Ruined My Youth. It's 2 o'clock today. At 9 o'clock in the evening the next day. P.S. Thank you to Enigmaangxi for tipping me 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Chapter 2180. Hua Xiaoheng noticed it too. He said calmly, "Continue watching." Lu Jin had no choice but to stop trying to change the status. He stared unblinkingly at the girl standing at the door of the dormitory where Gunyenji had set the scene. She looked at the door and smiled strangely. Then she knocked on the door. Gunyenji was bored and was about to start copying the NPC when she heard someone knock on the door. She raised an eyebrow. How interesting. How could someone come in this very private game setting? Although this game was an online game, it was not easy for ordinary players to gather in a setting. Unless it was a public place such as a hospital, a park, or some well-known scenic spots, very few people would be able to coincidentally pick the same game parameters. For example, Gunyenji's university dormitory. Unless it was someone who was also very familiar with this dormitory, how could an ordinary person barge in? It was even more impossible for an NPC. This game setting had just been built by her, and it was not a public setting. Would the system give her a temporary NPC? If that was the case, then it would be fun, Gunyenji's mind raced. She didn't pull out the plug-in to copy the core NPC, nor did she get up to open the door. Instead, she mischievously walked to the NPC Little Temptress's bed and switched positions with her. The NPC Little Temptress was now lying on Gunyenji's bed, while Gunyenji sat on the NPC Little Temptress's bed. Green Tea Fong and Lady Chow stood beside their respective dormitory beds. The girl at the door waited for a while. Seeing that no one opened the door, she hesitantly pushed it open. When Gunyenji came in, she hadn't expected anyone else to come to her rather private game setting, so she hadn't thought to lock the door. The girl pushed the door open. The light inside the door was bright and warm, very different from the dim light in the corridor. The girl narrowed her eyes as if she was stimulated by the light in the room. Gunyenji didn't move, but she was sitting facing the door, so she could openly size up the girl who had just barged in. She also determined that the girl wasn't an NPC, but an ordinary player. Then back to the question she had thought about before. What kind of ordinary player could enter the same private setting as her? There were only two possibilities. One was someone who was very familiar with her undergraduate life. Only by having the same life experience could they choose the same game setting and enter the same game setting. The other possibility was that this person had colluded with the game officials and could monitor her settings through the system. In fact, this person was even sent by the game officials. Gunyenji had been causing trouble in the game for so long that she had no doubt that the game officials were trying to locate her. This was quite interesting. Could it be that her former roommates are also playing this game? What a coincidence. She continued to sit still, but her heart was bursting with joy. After coming in, the person quickly adapted to the light in the room and quickly glanced around. Gunyenji keenly noticed that the girl who had opened the door on her own was looking at the position of her dorm bed. Of course, the one lying on the bed right now was the NPC Enchantress. Only then did she see the girl's gaze drift towards her, then from Green Tea Fong to Lady Chow. She looked around leisurely. No one in the room spoke and the whole place was very quiet. Gunyenji was already humming a little tune in her heart as background music. The girl didn't seem to expect this either. She awkwardly ran her hand through her hair and coughed lightly. She asked, "Excuse me, is this the dormitory for the C University Law Department?" Holy shit. She asked this the moment she arrived. Could it really be her former undergrad classmate? Who could it be? She had never seen someone with such ordinary looks and clothes before. Of course, the faces, figures, and clothes of the players in the game were all predetermined, so they wouldn't be the same as people in real life. So it was completely impossible to determine a person's true identity from their appearance. Then she could only judge from their speech and mannerisms. Gunyenji loved guessing games, so she felt even more excited. The girl asked, but when no one spoke, she couldn't help muttering to herself. Are they all NPCs? As she spoke, she walked over and stood in front of the NPC Green Tea Fong. She looked her up and down for a while before asking, "Excuse me, where is this?" The NPC seemed to have triggered the keyword and began to answer her mechanically. "Hello, this is the university dormitory. Do you need help?" The girl nodded with a smile. "Yes, what's your name?" Gunyenji's heart sank. Oh no, she had forgotten that she had set the NPC's name in her excitement. Wasn't that exposing her identity? The NPC immediately said, "I'm Green Tea Fong. What about you?" "You're Green Tea Fong?" The girl seemed surprised and happy. She stepped forward and shook her hand. "I'm Little Mao. Do you remember me?" Of course, the NPC Green Tea Fong didn't remember who Little Mao was. She replied stiffly, "Do you need help? Have you eaten? Do you need to study at night?" Gunyenji kept repeating the same words. Gunyenji was secretly anxious. Her fingers moved slightly to bring up the control panel and change the names of the remaining two NPCs back. When the girl who had pushed open the door couldn't get anything new out of Green Tea Fong, she turned excitedly to the NPC standing across from her and asked, "What's your name?" Gunyenji had already changed the names of the other two NPCs while the girl's attention was on Green Tea Fong. The NPC said expressionlessly, "I'm Passerby A. What's your name?" The girl froze. She seemed to be surprised once again. She glared at the NPC in front of her and instinctively asked, "What did you say? What's your name?" "Passerby A. What's your name?" The NPC Lady Chow was Gunyenji's creation. She could even control the conversation. It was actually just typing words into voice, so the girl hadn't noticed. After asking for a long time, the NPC Passerby A's constant repetition made the girl annoyed. She walked past her and stood by Gunyenji's bed. The NPC little temptress slowly sat up. Gunyenji hid her hands behind her back and continued to secretly control the NPC little temptress. The girl laughed and asked, "What's your name? Do you want me to guess?" Gunyenji tapped her fingers lightly and controlled the NPC to type a few words blindly. "Sure, guess." The NPC sounded like a normal player when she said it. The girl's eyes lit up. She thought to herself, this is definitely not an NPC. "I finally caught you," she said excitedly. "Is your surname Gu?" The NPC little temptress shook her head. "Why would my surname be Gu? My surname is Wang. What about you? What's your name?" This was the second update of the day, Chapter 2166. Guess who the NPC is? There were 2 updates today. Mwah 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 mwah. Chapter 2181. Wang? That's not right. The ordinary-looking girl looked at Gunyenji in confusion. "Is your surname really Wang?" "Yes, your name is Mao. Are you also from our university?" Gunyenji pretended to be enthusiastic. "Are you a student?" The ordinary-looking girl choked. She lowered her head and didn't know what to do. However, Gunyenji looked at her hand and noticed that it was half bent and her fingers were trembling slightly. Was she pulling up the control panel to look up her information? Gunyenji's expression froze. She immediately pulled up her own control panel and quickly clicked a few times to erase her IP address. Then she turned on the plugin to see who the stranger was who had intruded into her game setting was. However, when she checked the plugin, she discovered that the data for this person's location was blank. If she hadn't seen someone standing in front of her with her own eyes, she wouldn't have known that there were 5 people in her tiny dorm room instead of 4 just by looking at the game data. Gunyenji's heart tightened. She quickly turned off the control panel and looked up just in time to see the ordinary-looking girl also looking at her. The girl was clearly confused but still smiled. "Are you a student?" Gunyenji nodded. "Yes, I live here. I was very happy to see that this game could build a dorm setting." "Really? Then do you know who used to live in this dorm?" The girl walked over with a smile. Gunyenji was still sitting on the bed and lazily leaned against the bed frame. She combed her hair and blew at it. "Who knows? This isn't a newly built dorm. How would I know who used to live here?" As she spoke, she glared at the girl and said rudely, "Hey, don't keep asking me. Who the hell are you? I'll kick you out if you don't tell me. This is my private setting. I have the authority to kick out people I don't like." The girl pouted and glanced around the room. Seeing that there was no place to hide, she didn't want to waste any more time. She still didn't say who she was and only turned to walk towards the door. Gunyenji dragged out her voice behind her. "Remember to close the door. What's wrong with you to barge in without a sound?" The girl walked out without a word, slamming the door behind her. Gunyenji knew she was angry, so she smiled and quickly called up the control panel to erase all 3 NPCs. The next second she logged out of the game. As for the girl who had just walked out, she suddenly felt that something was wrong after walking along the corridor for a while. She had been deceived. The first person she asked when she entered was an NPC, but she said her name was Green Tea Fong. The system didn't have an NPC with the name Green Tea Fong at all. There was only Gunyenji, and only Gunyenji had a roommate with the nickname Green Tea Fong. The player who called himself Wang wasn't a student at all. If she guessed correctly, that person was Gunyenji. How cunning. I was almost fooled by her. The girl quickly turned back to the dormitory and kicked the door open. There were 4 people in the room a moment ago, but now there was no one left. The lights in the room were still bright, and there were slight wrinkles on the bedsheet. It was a sign that someone had sat on it. However, the person was gone. It was empty, as if the situation just now was just a dream. The girl shivered. She knew that Gunyenji must have seen that something was wrong and immediately retreated. She punched the dormitory wall and gritted her teeth. "Gunyenji, just you wait." Lu Jin, who had been standing by the side, couldn't hold it in any longer. He shook his arm violently and pushed Wu Xiaoheng's hand away. He took a step forward and changed his state from a spectator to a game. He entered the game scene that Gunyenji had set up. Lu Jin had chosen the identity of a university professor for himself. He was originally a professor, so his expression was very natural. He pushed open the door to Gunyenji's dormitory and said to the girl standing in the dormitory, "Who are you? This room isn't yours." The girl turned around in surprise and saw that it was a tall and thin man. She quickly sized him up and sneered. "Gunyenji? Don't think that I don't know you just because you changed your identity." Lu Jin raised his eyebrows. "Gunyenji? Who are you?" And who are you? Stop pretending. The girl suddenly smiled strangely. Anyway, as long as I'm sure it's you, you won't be able to escape. As she spoke, her figure slowly spread out in the dormitory. Her entire body went from corporeal to translucent, and finally became completely transparent. Like a firefly in summer, she shone in the dormitory like stars before completely disappearing. Ridiculous crazy. Lu Jin opened the control panel. Just like Gun Yanji, there was no data on his control panel that this ordinary-looking girl had ever appeared. He didn't say anything. He casually erased the scene that Gun Yanji had set up and left. Hua Xiaoheng only pushed it out after he was sure that the scene had been completely erased. The two of them took off their VR helmets and glasses in Hua Xiaoheng's study. Who was that woman just now? Do you have any clues? Hua Xiaoheng put the two VR helmets and glasses on the bookcase. Lu Jin shook his head. I'll go ask Nianji. Hua Xiaoheng followed him to the door of Gun Yanji's suite. Gun Yanji came out for a while and had just put away the VR helmet and glasses. She sat cross-legged on the sofa alone. There was an iPad on the coffee table opposite the sofa. Gun Yanji watched the game video on it while nibbling on an apple. Hearing someone knock on the door, Gun Yanji turned around and glanced. Come in. Lu Jin and Hua Xiaoheng walked in one after another. Lu Jin asked anxiously, Nianji, who was the person who went to your game scene just now? How did you know? Gun Yanji looked at them suspiciously. Did you watch me play games? Lu Jin chuckled and said unnaturally, I care about you. Do you need me to perfect your plugin? It can speed it up and take up more CPU. Gun Yanji immediately stopped being angry and quickly nodded. Okay. Thank you, Dad. Lu Jin and Hua Xiaoheng took the opportunity to sit down on either side of her. Hua Xiaoheng pondered for a moment and said, That woman today should be your classmate, right? Gun Yanji nodded casually. It must be. She knows Green Tea Fong, so she definitely knows me. Who is it? There's no girl with the surname Mao in your grade. Hua Xiaoheng put one hand on the back of Gun Yanji's sofa and looked down at the game video with her. Lu Jin's eyes widened in surprise. How did you know? Yanji has a lot of classmates in her undergrad, right? I know that the law faculty is usually a big faculty in the school. There are more than 100 to hundreds of students in a grade. Hua Xiaoheng smiled. Believe me, I remember the names, addresses, and family backgrounds of every classmate in her grade. Gun Yanji's heart warmed and she looked up at Hua Xiaoheng affectionately. Hua Xiaoheng kissed her with his eyes. After a while, he reluctantly looked away from her plump lips. Genius 1 second to remember website address. Mobile version, M. Chapter 2182. Only if he really had her in his heart would he remember everything related to her, right? Even if it was just a trivial matter, she would only know what he had done for her back then, but he had never said it. If Lu Jin hadn't asked her today, Gun Yanji would never have known about Hua Xiaoheng's silent care and protection for her. During the years when she had thought it was hopeless to have a crush on him, he had already built a wall of love to protect her from the wind and rain. He had allowed her to do whatever she wanted in the circle he was watching over. Gun Yanji felt like she was eating vanilla ice cream under the scorching sun. Although it was already so sweet that it had melted, the refreshing and warm feeling made her heart and bones soften. She wished she could snuggle into Hua Xiaoheng's arms right now. Hua Xiaoheng quietly moved his arm off the sofa behind Gun Yanji and wrapped it around her soft waist. Gun Yanji's body trembled slightly. Although the expression on her face didn't change much, her blushing cheeks gave away some clues. Only Lu Jin was unaware of the sudden sweetness in the room. He was still carefully thinking about the identity of the ordinary-looking girl. Nianji, if your former undergraduate classmate didn't have the surname Mao, then how do you feel about that person just now? Is there anything about her tone of voice and behavior that you find familiar? Gun Yanji composed herself and quietly pinched Hua Xiaoheng's arm that was tightening around her. She smiled and said, This is in the game, Dad. It's different from seeing the real person. If the real person was standing in front of me, I would be able to recognize her even if she had changed her appearance. Was her camera's memory just a decoration? I just checked her game data but I couldn't see anything. Lu Jin sked. His hands were itching to completely destroy the server and source code of the large-scale online game. However, he also knew that the large-scale online game was currently an important clue for them. If it was destroyed just like that, it wouldn't be worth it. It would allow the person behind the scenes to hide even better. Gun Yanji's eyes flashed as she began to reason. Although I can't figure out her true identity for the time being, We can do the reverse. First of all, we can't see her data at all. Even a plugin won't work. There's only one reason, and that's because her data is directly hidden by the system. This means that she's an insider of this game company. Moreover, it's not an ordinary employee of the game company, but an executive of the game company, or someone who has a very close relationship with the executive or even the boss behind the game company. Because only with such a strong relationship would the game's programmer or system maintenance open such a huge backdoor for her. Secondly, she knows my undergraduate classmates very well, or at least knows my dormitory roommates. This means that she is very likely to be my classmate in the same department. Lu Jin interrupted, "Don't the students from other departments and grades know you? My girl is smart and beautiful. Everyone in the school should know you." Gu Nianji, you have too much faith in your daughter. Gu Nianji couldn't help laughing and said, "Dad, I was very low-key during my undergraduate studies. At that time, Huashao gave me the identity of a distant relative of his. I lived in Sea City and was looking after houses for relatives." Lu Jin's gaze instantly darkened. He looked at Hua Xiaoheng unkindly as if he had mistreated his girl. Hua Xiaoheng, the relative sitting next to her, coughed uncomfortably and explained. Nianji was young at that time. She was only 16 years old and she was in class with a group of third-year classmates. It was better to keep a low profile. Otherwise, how would Nianji study well if all the lascivious girls pounced on her? A girl who was smart, beautiful, and had a family background and status would indeed attract many boys in school. Lu Jin reluctantly accepted this reason, but he still felt very guilty. He said, "Sai, it's all my fault. If it weren't for me, Nianji would have followed young Master He over there. Whether it was school or work, she would have been comfortable and smooth sailing. Why would she need to keep a low profile?" Hua Xiaoheng, was she deliberately stabbing him in the heart to draw blood? Seeing this, Gu Nianji quickly changed the topic and said, "Dad, I haven't finished analyzing yet. Do you still want to know who this girl who bragged to me that I can't escape is?" "Oh, go ahead." Lu Jin raised his hand. "I'm listening." Gu Nianji tilted her head and moved closer to the front of the sofa, slightly avoiding Hua Xiaoheng's burning arm around her waist. Only then would she be able to clear her head. She stretched out her finger and continued, "Based on how familiar she was with my roommates in the game, I still think she's a classmate in the same department as me, or at least temporarily, a classmate in the same department as me. This person shouldn't have cared about me in the first place." As soon as she spoke, I couldn't suppress her desire for me to be unlucky. Even if she was a game character, I could feel the malice and disgust coming from her. At this point, she suddenly stopped talking and thought about it seriously for a while. She shook her head and said, "No, it shouldn't be." "What's wrong?" Lu Jin and Hua Xiaoheng asked in unison. Gu Nianji almost pinched her fingers and posed like a fortune teller. She frowned slightly and said, "I've thought about it carefully. There were actually very few people who had a problem with me when I was an undergraduate. There were much fewer weird people and things than when I went to be university in the imperial capital for graduate school. At that time she had met Wen Shuyi, the weirdo among weirdos, in order to take the exam for Hijichu's graduate school. Gu Nianji pursed her lips and retracted her thoughts from Wen Shuyi. "Isn't that good? The scope is smaller again. How could that be wrong?" Lu Jin asked in confusion. "It's because the scope is small. There were only a few people who had a problem with me when I was an undergraduate, but none of them had the time or conditions to commit the crime." Gu Nianji spoke smoothly and even used legal terminology. "That doesn't matter. Let's see if they have the motive first and then see if they have the objective conditions." Hua Xiaoheng immediately decided. "Who else has a problem with you that I don't know about?" Gu Nianji, she had forgotten that Hua Xiaoheng probably knew more about her than she did. However, when it came to what happened back then, she couldn't avoid talking about their first time. With Lu Jin glaring at her covetously to hear the details, Gu Nianji felt that her face was so hot that it could burn. Hua Xiaoheng turned his head and glanced at Gu Nianji. Seeing her suddenly blush, he was slightly stunned and also thought of that matter. His heart trembled slightly and he quickly changed the topic. "I think the person who had a problem with you the most during your undergraduate years was your ex-first boyfriend, Mei Xiaowen, right?" Lu Jin's eyes suddenly widened. "First boyfriend? Nianji, your first boyfriend wasn't Hua Xiaoheng?" Gu Nianji quickly waved her hand. "Dad, don't listen to Major General Hua's nonsense. Of course my first boyfriend was Major General Hua." Hua Xiaoheng, although he was still sitting next to Gu Nianji without batting an eyelid, his iron bones were about to be warmed by Gu Nianji's words. Chapter 2183. Hua Xiaoheng simply held Gu Nianji's hand and smiled at Lu Jin. I'm indeed Nianji's first love. As for Mei Xiaowen, I can only say that he was the catalyst for our love. Without him, Nianji might not have realized her feelings for me. Gu Nianji rolled her eyes countless times in her heart. Deep down, she admitted that Mei Xiaowen was her first boyfriend, but in the face of the two most important men in her life, she was a coward. She didn't dare to tell the truth. But how could there be so many black and white truths between couples? For example, wouldn't everyone say such unreliable words like, "I'll love you for 10,000 years, happily"? The people who listen would also believe it wholeheartedly. As long as the two of them were happy, it was fine, and they didn't offend anyone. Gu Nianji rationally decided not to dwell on this issue. She quickly changed the topic and said, since we've already confirmed that this person is related to my undergraduate classmate, why don't we think of a way to find her? Oh, you don't even know her last name. How can you think of a way? Lu Jin's scientist thinking was always more linear. He was worse than Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng when it came to digging holes. Hua Xiaoheng could tell that Gu Nianji was feeling guilty. He looked at her with a half smile and didn't expose her. Gu Nianji braced herself and said under Hua Xiaoheng's intense gaze, I've thought of a way, but I need your help. No problem. Go ahead. I'll give you whatever help you need. Lu Jin waved his hand excitedly. Daddy wants to be your robot cat that will do whatever you want. Gu Nianji, robot cat? She didn't expect Lu Jin to have a hobby of watching antique cartoons. The corners of Gu Nianji's mouth twitched, and she quickly glanced at Hua Xiaoheng before replying seriously. I'm getting married soon, aren't I? I want to treat my undergrad classmates to a meal and have them join in as well. Have a part. When this extremely down-to-earth word came out of Gu Nianji's mouth, Lu Jin felt like the world had turned into a fantasy. Hua Xiaoheng still looked indifferent. Anyway, he was already used to Gu Nianji's various behaviors. Even when she said she wanted to learn Yanko, he would calmly borrow a video for her to dance to. Lu Jin looked at Hua Xiaoheng a few times. Seeing that he wasn't shocked at all, he suppressed the surprise in his heart and asked Gu Nianji, Then did you attend your classmate's wedding? Gu Nianji, she said coldly, Dad, now is not the time to talk about courtesy. Then why do you still want your classmate to follow you? Lu Jin scratched his head. I don't think it's appropriate to use this method to find that person. Would that person be so stupid as to rush to give you money and even get caught by you? This is just a pretext. Hua Xiaoheng put his hand on Gu Nianji's shoulder and explained to Lu Jin with a warm expression, and with Nianji's current status, even if the price was clearly stated, there would still be a bunch of people fighting to get it, let alone just letting everyone follow suit. Gu Nianji rolled her eyes at him. Hua Xiao, don't make me sound so snobbish. I do want to get together with my old classmates. As for the follow suit, it's just a joke. If they can come, I'll cover everything, including the travel expenses, accommodation expenses, and the cost of the dinner. That's more like it. Lu Jin nodded in satisfaction. I'll transfer you some money later. Take it to treat your classmates to a meal. Don't let them pay for it. Do you need money? As he said this, Lu Jin glared at Hua Xiaoheng, as if he was condemning him for not giving his woman money to spend. Hua Xiaoheng rubbed his nose and asked non-committally, Nianji, what do you want us to do? Gu Nianji smiled and told them her plan. Lu Jin and Hua Xiaoheng nodded and said, Okay, let's do that. One day in May, Gu Nianji called her undergraduate dorm roommates, Green Tea Fong, Little Temptress, and Lady Chow. Green Tea Fong, it's Gu Nianji. Do you remember me? Green Tea Fong's hands trembled when she heard Gu Nianji's voice, but she still said gently, Who are you? I don't know you. Green Tea Fong. How dare you not recognize me? Gu Nianji's voice suddenly rose an octave. She looked flustered and exasperated, making Green Tea Fong giggle for a long time. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. What can I do for you, Chief Gu? You finally remember your old classmate. Diske, I've been waiting for your call for so long. Green Tea Fong's voice was still so gentle and elegant, but she was actually very black-bellied. Men were deceived by her green tea appearance. Gu Nianji also clicked her tongue. It's still the same taste, the same recipe. Green Tea Fong, your green tea skills have increased. That's right. I naturally have to be very focused in front of my old classmate, especially in front of you, Chief Gu. I'm afraid that if I'm not careful, I'll only be able to answer yes or no, Green Tea Fong said as she sat in her office signing documents. Gu Nianji laughed and said, Okay, enough nonsense. I called you today because I want to treat my old classmate to a meal. Aren't I getting married? Green Tifang's hand tightened and the pen scratched a hard line on the paper. Get married. She threw the pen in her hand and stood up with one foot on her chair. She put her hands on her hips and posed like a teapot. She yelled into the phone, "You finally said you're getting married. Where's the invitation? Where's the bridesmaid group? Gunyanji, I've waited so long that my hair has turned white. If you don't give me the invitation and let me be your bridesmaid, I'll break off all ties with you." Gunyanji's eardrums were about to burst from Green Tifang's roar. She quickly moved the phone further away and said with a drawn-out laugh, "Okay, of course I'll give you the invitation. The four of us in my dorm are so nice, why wouldn't I give you the invitation? But before my official wedding, I want to treat my undergrad classmates to a meal. Do you think I should go to Sea City or the Imperial Capital?" Green Tifang finally let out a long sigh of relief after getting the invitation. She turned to glare at her subordinates, who were almost petrified, and waved her hand. "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen me lose my temper before?" She turned and closed the office door. Green Tifang finally sat down and asked quietly, "You want to treat your former undergrad classmates to a meal? Sure, with your reputation you'll be able to get a lot of support once you gather them. Let's see how much money you're offering to treat them. You're even welcome to eat until you're broke." Gunyanji laughed so hard she put her hands on her hips. "No problem, you're welcome to eat. But I've barely contacted my former classmates. I only have the contact details of the three of you." She spoke very subtly, but Green Tifang already understood. She immediately said, "No problem, leave it to the three of us. I'll discuss it with Little Temptress and Lady Chow right away. As for the location, we'll see how many classmates we can gather and let you know." Gunyanji nodded. "Sure, I'll also call Little Temptress and Lady Chow separately. Otherwise they'll say I'm biased." "Oh, you know about that?" To be fair, Green Tifang had taken care of Gunyanji the most. Gunyanji was closer to her and treated her like an older sister. Gunyanji giggled. "Green Tifang, you're the green sand mole in my heart. You know that? You're the mosquito's blood on my wall." Green Tifang teased her for a while before saying, "All right, don't worry. I'll help you gather them. We'll definitely have a good gathering when the time comes." Gunyanji grunted, then said in a seemingly casual manner, "Oh right, in the years since graduation everyone has families, right? How about this, each student can bring a family member and everyone can get to know each other. What do you think?" "Of course." Green Tifang smiled casually. She coughed and lowered her voice to ask, "If we really want to invite our undergraduate classmates, you know who we can't avoid. Wouldn't your boyfriend mind?" Gunyanji knew she was talking about Mei Xiaowen. She smiled nonchalantly and said, "Then let's invite him. If we don't invite him, it'll be a blatant lie. I don't want people to think that about me." A real woman dared to stand up to the scumbag that she dumped. Please remember the domain name of this book. The fastest website for mobile version, M. Chapter 2184. "Haha, I'm glad you don't mind." Green Tifang laughed, then said seriously, "I'm not trying to make things difficult for you, but Mei Xiaowen is our class representative Little Temptress, Lady Chow, and I haven't had any contact with him all these years. He treated you so badly back then, so of course we're on the same side. We don't bother with people who don't treat you well. But if you're inviting other undergraduates this time, then maybe someone will tell him. If you don't invite him, it'll really be a little suspicious. Who knows, some people might even start spreading more rumors. Even if you're the Senate's chief legal counsel, Mei Xiaowen is still a cinnabar mole in your heart. Words like that will choke you to death." Gunyanji listened to Green Tifang in silence, then finally smiled. "I know, that's why I said it doesn't matter. You Little Temptress and Lady Chow can do as you see fit. We'll invite him, but it's up to him if he wants to come or not." "That's right." Green Tifang nodded with satisfaction. "Don't worry about me. Wait for us to inform you in 2 days." Gunyanji happily covered her phone and lay on the sofa. She crossed her long fair legs to exercise as she said, "Then I'm counting on you. I'll call Little Temptress and Lady Chow later, just in case they eat me up when they see me." "Hee hee, you think you won't get eaten up just because you called? Girl, just wash your neck and wait." Green Tifang teased her for a while before putting down the phone. She quickly took out her old classmates' records and flipped through them. Gunyanji then called Little Temptress and Lady Chow. Little Temptress was in a meeting with her subordinates when she received the call. Seeing Gunyanji's number, she immediately walked into the small room and smiled. "Chief Gu, you're finally willing to call me?" Gu Nianji smiled and begged for forgiveness. After a few pleasantries she said, "Little temptress, I want to invite an old classmate to dinner. I just discussed it with Green Tea Fong and she agreed. What do you think?" "Of course, Green Tea Fong, Lady Chow and I will help you organize it. How many do you want?" Little temptress was still as capable as ever, and quickly thought of the practical problem. "As long as you agree," Gu Nianji said cheerfully, her legs kicking even harder in the air. "Anyway, it's just a classmate from the same undergraduate course. If they want to come, they can come. They can bring a family member." "Sure, no problem. I have a lot of experience in planning large-scale events, and I can finally show it today," Little Enchantress said with a grin. "Little girl, wash yourself clean and lie down, and wait for us to have sex with you." "Pfft." Gu Nianji scolded him with a smile. She teased him a few more times before hanging up and calling Lady Chow. Lady Chow was the most steady person in their dormitory. Because she had the demeanor of a noble young lady from ancient times, she was given the nickname Lady Chow. She wasn't a petty person, so she didn't express any dissatisfaction with this nickname. Instead, she began to refer to herself as this consort, which was quite funny. When Gu Nianji called, she was just about to go for lunch. When she saw Gu Nianji's caller ID, she quickly swiped open the phone and said, "Nianji, you still remember me?" Gu Nianji felt a sense of distance from her when she said, "this consort." It was as if all these years had been filled with time, and they had never been apart. The intimacy between schoolmates and teenagers was something that time could not erase. Of course, this was a classmate they had a good relationship with. If it was a classmate they didn't have a good relationship with, they would rather spend the rest of their lives apart and never see each other again. Gu Nianji sat up from the sofa and couldn't help nodding and bowing. "Greetings, Lady Chow. How has Lady Chow been lately? Have you had a good time?" Lady Chow snorted and almost sat on the floor with laughter. "Chief Gu, greetings to this consort, so this consort can rest in peace. Bad things don't work, good things do." Gu Nianji quickly knocked on the wood 3 times. "Lady Chow, you are entering the palace. How can you talk nonsense?" Lady Chow knew that Gu Nianji was worried about her, and her heart warmed. She thought back to when this little roommate first came to their dorm. She didn't seem to speak much at first. She only stared at you with her big black eyes. Her expression was delicate and innocent, just like a newborn kitten. The moment they saw her, they all had the urge to hide this child so that she wouldn't be polluted by the evil society. Of course, after getting to know her, they realized that the delicate and innocent appearance was all a facade. This girl was delicate and intelligent. She wasn't at all naive, and was so smart that people would admire her. Although she was the youngest in their dorm, she had all kinds of clever ideas and was the apple of their eye. They all took good care of her and protected her. They didn't look down on her or bully her because she was an orphan at the time. Gu Nianji was rescued from a burning car by Hua Xiaoheng at the age of 12. She stayed with him at the Special Operations Forces base in Sea City for 4 years. At the age of 16, she took a special exam and skipped a grade to enter Sea University's Faculty of Law as a junior. Her academic progress was comparable to her classmates who were a few years older than her. She had just left the Special Operations Forces base and had to blend in with the crowd. Like a newborn chick, her first impression of society would have a great impact on her worldview. Fortunately, Gu Nianji met 3 very good roommates, so she was able to let go of her innate wariness. The 2 of them joked around for a while before Gu Nianji mentioned that she was getting married and treating. Lady Chow's reaction was exactly the same as Green Tea Fong's and Little Temptress's. They all immediately took on the responsibility of treating her to dinner and told her not to worry about anything. They would take care of everything for her. She didn't even have to worry about money. She could just come to the banquet. Gu Nianji was inexplicably touched. She immediately said, "Don't argue with me about money. It's my wedding treat after all. How could I let you guys bleed?" "Chief Gu, you're looking down on us." Lady Chow laughed. "We can still afford this bit of money. Just treat it as a wedding gift from the 3 of us." "This gift is too expensive." Gu Nianji quickly declined. "Really? Besides, it's my treat. If you guys really want to give me a wedding gift, you can give me something else. I believe this bit of money isn't a big deal to you, but it means a lot to me." She tried to persuade her for a long time before Lady Chow reluctantly agreed. When she hung up, she kept telling her that she was being too polite. How could Gu Nianji not know that Lady Chow was considerate? She was worried that her family wasn't rich enough, so she wanted to subsidize her. In their hearts, she was probably still that little orphan girl who needed everyone to take care of her. Gu Nianji's heart warmed. Some people treated her like an orphan girl, and thought she was easy to bully. But some people treated her like an orphan girl, and thought she needed more love. You see, the same thing, but the starting point was different, so people felt completely different. She didn't mind the latter kind of orphan girl at all, because she would receive a lot of love. A person who had lost her childhood memories did indeed need a lot of love to fill that void. After contacting her old classmates, Gu Nianji went to the restaurant at He Xiaoheng's official residence for dinner. Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang were already sitting there reading the newspaper. Lu Jin was holding an iPad and looking at something. Seeing her come in, Zhao Liangzi smiled and said, "I heard you're going to treat your former undergraduate classmates to dinner?" Gu Nianji nodded and was in a good mood. "I just called my undergraduate roommates. Green Tea Fong, Little Temptress and Lady Chow. Do you still remember them? They were so nice to me. I didn't contact them for all these years after graduation because of various things, and they didn't blame me at all. I'm so lucky to have such roommates." Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi looked at each other and smiled. Yin Shixiang said proudly, "Of course. That year, Major General Hua said he wanted to send you to college and get in touch with society. In order to find you roommates, Major General Hua went to great lengths to do all kinds of investigations. He even hired a psychiatrist to do a psychological assessment and personality analysis of those people. He only chose those classmates who could match your personality as roommates. He was afraid that our little princess would be wronged." Zhao Liangzi also blinked and said, "Green Tea Fong, Little Temptress and Lady Chow. We're very familiar with them, but they don't know that we've investigated them. Don't let it slip." Gu Nianji. She had thought that she was lucky to have met 3 roommates who got along well with each other, but it turned out that someone had quietly done a lot of preparatory work behind the scenes. Yes, how could there be so many smooth paths under the sun? Someone had helped her remove all the stumbling stones. Genius. 1 second to remember this website's address. Mobile version. Chapter 2185. Gu Nianji was so moved that she couldn't speak. Tears almost welled up in Dianqi's eyes. Lu Jin looked up from his iPad and said, "That's more like it. Otherwise I would really regret." Gu Nianji coughed loudly and said, "Dad, what about the thing you promised to do for me?" Lu Jin almost let it slip. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi didn't know about the existence of the other world. They had always thought that Gu Nianji had been kidnapped abroad. Lu Jin laughed and said guiltily, "I'm busy, don't worry." Seeing that Lu Jin had shown weakness, Gu Nianji was relieved. She smiled and said, "I'll be treating you in a few days. Don't hold me back." I won't. Lu Jin agreed. While they were talking, the orderly from the kitchen brought lunch over. Everyone usually ate separately. There was a large plate in front of them. Usually there were 2 dishes and a soup, plus fruit and dessert. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi had the same plate. There were 2 steaks and mashed potatoes, a bowl of white radish mutton soup, and a cut navel orange as fruit. They didn't eat dessert. On Gu Nianji's plate was a dish of fried onion, sea cucumber and black-bone chicken stir-fried huaishan. The main dish was Yangzhou fried rice. There was also a bowl of abalone, apricot, mushroom and snow clam soup that was especially nourishing for women. It was yellow and delicious in her mouth. The fruit was shelled lychees, and the dessert was a triangular piece of New York yogurt cake. She looked at the large plate in front of her and pursed her lips. "Although it's all my favorite food, I've been eating like this every day recently. Is Major General Hua feeding pigs?" Zhao Liangzi ate his steak with a knife and fork and winked at her with a smile on his face. "I'm not raising pigs. I'm preparing to raise little piglet, Gu Nianji." She didn't understand what Zhao Liangzi meant. Yin Shixiang held back his laughter and kicked Zhao Liangzi under the table. Lu Jin liked stir-fried beef tenderloin and husband and wife lung slices, plus a large bowl of white rice, with conch jade bamboo and wolfberry soup. The fruit was only a green kiwi and a plate of volcanic rock cake. He looked at the food in front of Gu Nianji and nodded. He said seriously, "Flower gums, sea cucumbers, black-bone chicken, huaishan, abalone, snow clams and yogurt are all prepared for pregnancy." Gu Nianji froze for a moment, then blood rushed from the tips of her toes to the top of her head. She felt her entire body flush red. In fact, her face was only slightly pink, like a small flower bud that was about to bloom. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi saw how embarrassed Gu Nianji was and desperately tried to hold in their laughter. They changed the subject and said, "You want to treat us? Who are you inviting?" Gu Nianji composed herself and suppressed the strange feeling in her heart. She smiled and said, "Oh, my undergrad classmates. I just called Green Tea Fong, Little Temptress, and Lady Chow you were talking about. Oh, are you treating everyone to a meal before you get married? Why don't you let them have a share?" Yin Shixiang said with a smirk, "When I married Chi-Chi, I let my classmates from childhood have a share." Gun Yinji rolled her eyes at him. "You're just showing off on purpose, okay? Chi-Chi is such a good girl to be your wife. You're in luck." Yin Shixiang chuckled and said, "Chi-Chi is also your roommate, but she's a postgraduate student. Won't you consider treating your postgraduate classmates to a meal?" Gun Yinji shook her head and said with a half-smile, "My only friend during my postgraduate days was Chi-Chi. We'll have many opportunities to eat together. It won't be just once or twice." "Why did you only have one friend during your postgraduate days?" Lu Jin asked with concern. "Didn't you say Major General Hua helped her choose her roommate?" "That was during my undergrad days." Zhao Liangzi finished the last bite of steak and took a sip of water. He said, "Nianji wasn't even an adult at that time. Major General Hua was also worried that she wouldn't be used to living outside." Yin Shixiang also said, "That's right. When Nianji went to the imperial capital to study under Professor He, she was already an adult. It was time to let go." When he heard that Gun Yanji's masters was He Jichu's masters, Lu Jin understood. He smiled at Gun Yanji and said happily, "My girl is so rare." Gun Yanji, Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi were already used to Lu Jin's doting demonic style, so they were no longer surprised. They finished their lunch without being affected and got up to go back to the office. Gun Yanji and Lu Jin were left behind. Lu Jin asked, "Where's Major General Hua? He hasn't been back for lunch for the past 2 days. Maybe he's busy." Gun Yanji looked at her watch. "I'm going back to work at the Senate tomorrow. I won't be back for lunch. Dad, you can eat by yourself." Go ahead. I'm fine." Lu Jin waved his hand without hesitation. "I plan to go to Elder Lu's office for a meal tomorrow." Gun Yanji, only Lu Jin could run from the 3rd ring road to the mountains outside the 5th ring road for a meal. The next day, after Gun Yanji went to work at the Senate, she found out that she had invited her undergraduate classmates to dinner. It was a trending topic on Weibo. Gun Yanji looked at the trending topic and was speechless for a long time. #Students of C University's Faculty of Law Class XX. Chief Gu has invited you over for dinner. It was obvious that it was Green Tea Fong's doing. She had really carried out the policy of big and special. 3 years after graduating from undergrad, Gun Yanji was the fastest developed among her former classmates. Of course, other than those rich second-generation heirs whose families had mines. For example, Green Tea Fong, Little Temptress, and Lady Chow all had family businesses. After graduating, they worked outside for 2 years before returning to work in their own family businesses. These were not comparable. There were also some undergrad classmates who had just graduated with their master's degrees this year and were starting to look for jobs. They could not compare to someone like Gun Yanji who had risen like a rocket. But this did not stop everyone from getting together as old classmates. Because it had only been a short time since graduation, everyone's status in society was about the same. There was no such thing as not wanting to see their classmates if they weren't doing well. But for someone like Gun Yanji, because she was too fast and too good, most people could not get jealous. Anyway, after Green Tea Fong bought the trending topic on Weibo, she was added to the undergrad class chat group. Green Tea Fong. "Hi everyone, I'm Green Tea Fong. Do you guys remember me?" As soon as she entered, she sent a message with a cute JPG emoticon. The class chat was quiet for a while, then exploded with activity. A group of boys ran out to at her and even sent her red packets to celebrate. They asked excitedly, "Green Tea Fong, you're finally back. I thought you had cut all ties with us." Actually, everyone knew why Green Tea Fong, Little Temptress, and Lady Chow had left the group. It was because Mei Xiaowen had created the group. He was their old class rep and had been in charge of all the post-graduation class gatherings and whatnot. In the beginning, because of his relationship with Gun Yanji, they didn't get along very well, but Gun Yanji didn't contact them afterward. Slowly, everyone's hearts cooled down. Mei Xiaowen liked crowds, so after a few invitations, everyone united around him again. Only Green Tea Fong, Little Temptress, and Lady Chow had followed Gun Yanji's lead and left the class chat. Now Green Tea Fong was back and she had brought that trending topic with her. After exchanging a few pleasantries, everyone began to ask her questions. "Green Tea Fong, is it really Gun Yanji who wants to treat us to dinner? Is it that girl who skipped a year to 3rd year at 16? She's now the chief legal advisor of the Senate? Is it really the same person? Chapter 2186. The corners of Green Tifang's mouth twitched as she replied slowly, "Oh, you're still wondering if Chief Gu is the little Nianji from our class? Do you live in the Stone Age and can't surf the internet?" Little Temptress also entered the group at this time. She saw the conversation and immediately said furiously, "This isn't stupidity, it's blindness. Was there a need to ask if they were the same person? Haven't you seen her photo on the internet?" When Gu Nianji was still a graduate student in the Faculty of Law at B University, she had made a name for herself online because of the German lawsuit. After she became the chief legal counsel of the Senate, she appeared on the hot search list every other day. Her official Weibo profile picture was her ID photo. Was there any doubt? Green Tifang and Little Temptress's sarcasm put the student who had asked, "Is it really the same person?" He couldn't help but reply, "I was just asking out of curiosity. Do you guys have to be so overbearing?" Seeing that the three of them were about to quarrel, the other students immediately tried to smooth things over. All right, today is the return of an old classmate. Let's talk about something happy." "Yeah, Green Tifang, where are you working these days?" "Enchantress, long time no see. Send me a selfie." Green Tifang and Little Temptress didn't come back to fight, but they felt a little uncomfortable seeing their classmates speculate about Gu Nianji. They didn't understand why Gu Nianji wanted to treat these classmates to dinner, but they had already said it and bought the trending searches. They couldn't go back empty-handed. Green Tifang composed herself and tried to lighten the mood. Then she sent a message. "Green Tifang. Everyone, have you seen the trending searches? Gu Nianji was getting married, and before that she wanted to get together with her old classmates and treat everyone to a meal. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Where is everyone now? Let me see if I should treat them in Sea City or the Imperial Capital." At the mention of treating, everyone became lively. More and more students began to speak. "Treat? Since Chief Gu is treating, then I must go, ha. I'm in the Imperial Capital. Anytime. Upstairs +1, I'm also in the Imperial Capital. I'm going to graduate this year and I've just finished my thesis. I'm looking for a place to have a feast. Let's take this opportunity to get together. This year is the 3rd year since I graduated from my undergraduate program. I miss all of you." As they spoke, everyone reported their current location. Honestly speaking, everyone's relationship at that time was quite harmonious. The only disharmony was probably after Gu Nianji and Mei Xiaowen's relationship broke up. The class was naturally divided into two factions, those who supported Mei Xiaowen and those who supported Gu Nianji. Other than that, there really wasn't any real conflict between them. Green Tifang read for a while, then slowly replied, "Most of them are in the Imperial Capital. 80% of the students are in the Imperial Capital. I don't think we need to discuss where to treat, right? The minority obeys the majority. It would take more than 3 hours to fly from Sea City to the Imperial Capital. The high-speed train was also fast, but it would take a little longer, about 5 hours. It would only take a weekend." He then confirmed the date. It would be the following Saturday to give everyone more time to prepare. As for the exact hotel, he would inform everyone after discussing it with Gu Nianji. While everyone was discussing, Yao Ji pulled Lady Chow into the conversation. Lady Chow was more detailed. She looked at everyone's comments and added with a smile. Nianji said that everyone can bring a family member. If you have a husband or wife, you can bring them to the event. You can bring your family? Are you serious? Can I bring my son? A guy who had gotten married and had a child after graduating joked. My son is very handsome, even though he's only a little over 1 year old. Everyone congratulated him and gave him red packets to celebrate. Lady Chow smiled and left a message. Congratulations, but you can't. The family member must be an adult. It's not convenient to bring a child to a hotel. The guy was only joking. He didn't want to bring his child to a class reunion. That would make him look old. Other students also joked in the group. What if you have a girlfriend and a wife? Who should you bring? That's a problem? Ha ha, old Luo, you're too timing. The group was bustling with activity. The number of messages shot up and soon reached 99 plus. Green Tifang, Little Temptress, and Lady Chow created a small group and chatted privately. Green Tifang, have you guys noticed? Mei Xiaowen hasn't spoken yet. Little Temptress, is he online? Or is he busy and didn't have time to check the messages? Lady Chow, it's lunchtime now. If it's not urgent, he should have seen our messages in the group. The three of them chatted privately for a while and were thinking of a way to verify whether Mei Xiaowen was online or not. The guy who had just asked if Gu Nianji and Chief Gu were the same person actually tagged Mei Xiaowen in the group. Mei Xiaowen, class rep, say something. Didn't your girlfriend say that Chief Gu and Gu Nianji weren't the same person when we had lunch together the other day? You didn't deny what she said either. Everyone in the group froze when they saw the message. The group, which had been bustling with activity a moment ago, instantly quieted down. Mei Xiaowen couldn't pretend he hadn't seen the message even if he wanted to. He frowned and glanced at the flirtatious girl sitting next to him. Finally he sent a reply. Welcome Green Tea Fong, Little Temptress and Lady Chow back to our big group. Gu Nianji is treating. Great. Everyone join us. Have fun and eat well. Seeing Mei Xiaowen's message, the guy who had tagged him earlier replied in surprise. Class rep, aren't you going? Yes, everyone was craning their necks and rubbing their eyes, waiting for his reply. There weren't many couples in the class back then, and Mei Xiaowen and Gu Nianji were the most eye-catching couple. They had split up on bad terms on Christmas Eve that year, and it was still fresh in everyone's minds. Mei Xiaowen's fingers hesitated. He was about to reply when the girl sitting next to him glanced at his phone and said with a smile, Oh? Gu Nianji is your classmate? She's treating? This is an opportunity that I can't wait for. She winked at Mei Xiaowen. Mei Xiaowen was in high spirits with her and naturally didn't want to argue. However, he carefully explained, Gu Nianji and I used to be a couple but we broke up. Now that she's getting married, shouldn't I avoid arousing suspicion? We're all classmates and know each other well. It wouldn't be good to embarrass her if we went, right? Mei Xiaowen said hesitantly. The girl smiled and raised her hand to stroke her neat short hair. She said casually, What's wrong with that? She's treating us. Doesn't she know about the situation? Maybe she's purposely treating an old classmate to humiliate you. Don't tell me you're afraid to see her? Her words pierced Mei Xiaowen's heart. He couldn't afford to lose face in front of his current girlfriend. He immediately said, I'll go, do you want to come with me? Chapter 2187. The woman seemed a bit surprised, her beautiful almond-shaped eyes widening in a cute way. Can I go too? I'm not your classmate. What's wrong with that? They said everyone can bring a family member. Girlfriends count as family too. Mei Xiaowen smiled slightly. I see, I'll check my calendar to see if I'm free that day. The woman didn't agree right away and left some suspense. Mei Xiaowen became even more enthusiastic and immediately replied in the group. Long time no see with Gu Nianji. I'm very happy to know she's finally getting married. We're friends, so of course I want everything to be good for her. He paused and added, Last time I saw the news about the Senate's chief legal counsel, I couldn't believe it. After all, she looked mature and beautiful in the photos online, very different from how she used to look. Even though I'm familiar with her, I didn't recognize her. Then he tagged the guy who had asked if they were the same person. Sorry bro, we misled you. Even I didn't recognize her, much less you. The guy felt he had saved face and replied in the group. It's okay, class rep is Gu Nianji's ex-boyfriend. If even class rep can't recognize her, how can we? I thought it was just someone with the same name. After all, her name isn't so special that she's the only one in the world, right? The hot-tempered little temptress saw this and was furious. She immediately replied, I think you're both stupid and blind. Since you saw someone with the same name and looks familiar, why didn't you check her resume yourself? Why did you have to ask Mei Xiaowen? As the chief legal counsel of the Senate, Gu Nianji's resume was publicly available on the internet. Lady Chow went to the Senate's official website and took a screenshot of Gu Nianji's resume and sent it to the group. Lady Chow, see for yourself, even an illiterate person can read pictures. Look at the shiny C University emblem on her undergrad, and the date of her graduation. The guy was so embarrassed that he left the group in a fit of anger. After he left, Green Tea tried to smooth things over. Okay, everyone else knows that Chief Gu is our classmate, right? Come. Those who are free next weekend, come and register with me. I'll count the number of people and tell Nianji that she'll contact the hotel where we're having the party. Most of the remaining students had a good impression of Gu Nianji. She was now in a high position and was a law major. Everyone was studying law, so it wasn't a bad thing to bond. Everyone signed up, and in the end, everyone except for the boy who had just left the group, including Mei Xiaowen, said that he wanted to go. And Mei Xiaowen had to bring a family member with him. Green Tea Fong was very considerate. She counted the number of people and confirmed the time before sending the message to Gunyenji. For convenience's sake, she added Gunyenji as a friend and added her to her Little Temptress and Lady Chow's small group. The group was named after their undergraduate dorm room number. Chatting in the group was like returning to the time when everyone was lying in bed and chatting at night. Gunyenji looked at the name list and the number of people Green Tea Fong had sent her. She replied with a smile. Looks like I used to be quite popular. Most of the people are here. Little Temptress, yeah, there's only one person who's a bit of *TC. He left the group. I think he's too embarrassed to join. Gunyenji didn't ask what it was. She smiled and typed, really? Who is it? Little Temptress typed a name and said, it's a male classmate. Gunyenji couldn't be bothered to ask about the male classmate. She only cared about the female classmate. But after going through the names, Gunyenji couldn't think of anyone who was against her. She rubbed her temples. She decided to take it one step at a time. Because Green Tea Fong had bought the trending searches, the news of Gunyenji's wedding treat spread like wildfire in the C University Faculty of Law. Not only her classmates but even students from other classes were asking about it. They wanted to freeload and see Gunyenji. They found Green Tea Fong and expressed their wish to give Gunyenji a wedding gift. Of course this was because they had ulterior motives. Everyone knew that. Gunyenji didn't want to accept gifts, so she rejected them all. After confirming the number of people and the time, Gunyenji and Hua Xiaoheng discussed which hotel would be the most suitable for the treat. She sat cross-legged on Hua Xiaoheng's lap and opened a directory of hotels in the imperial capital. She flipped through them one by one, from the environment to the food, drinks, and alcohol. Hua Xiaoheng leaned against the wall and stretched his long legs on the floor. He hugged Gunyenji from behind and looked through all the hotels in the imperial capital. He mused, these hotels are more high-end and the security is more strict. I don't think it's a good place to test them. Then what kind of place is the best for us to test them? Gunyenji asked curiously. She was looking for a hotel, of course, one that looked high-end, had a romantic vibe, and had delicious food. She had almost forgotten that she was going to fish. Hua Xiaoheng chuckled and took out another directory for her to see. Of course it's a hotel with a moderate environment, messy management, and slightly messy staff. Gunyenji was speechless. Why are these hotels suitable for fishing? Gunyenji was even more curious now. There are too many people and people will talk. How will it be easy to investigate? There are no fish when the water is too clear, Hua Xiaoheng said simply. Hua Xiaoheng said simply, that's why we need to muddy the waters so that those people will think they have an opportunity. If they fortified their defenses and prepared for battle, the mastermind would be able to slip away faster than a monkey. Gunyenji suddenly understood and nodded. Sure enough, we have our own specialties. Hua Xiao, you're the expert in this field. I'll listen to you. This was the benefit of two people with different majors. Because they didn't understand each other's work, it was easier to blindly worship each other unconditionally. It could greatly improve the relationship between both parties. After all, no one wanted to go home and still be criticized for their mistakes at work. If two people were in the same major and both had strong personalities, it was easy for neither to submit to the other. Their relationship would be affected by work and they would end up parting on bad terms. Gunyenji looked at him with adoration. Hua Xiaoheng wanted to kiss her and hold her in his arms as if he wanted to kiss her to the bone. 2 days later, Gunyenji sent the hotel's name and address to Green Tea Fong. Green Tea Fong looked at it and fell silent. She originally wanted to speak in the group of 4, but after some thought, she added Little Temptress and Lady Chow into a separate group. She said, Nyenji's hotel is ready. What do you guys think? Little Temptress and Lady Chow had actually already seen it in the group. They were completely unfamiliar with the hotel. Little Temptress and Lady Chow searched on Google before they found the hotel's introduction. Lady Chow thought about it for a long time and left a message. It's a mid-range hotel. Not bad, right? Little Temptress also said, even a hotel like this costs 200 per person. There are more than 20 people in our class. Including family members, that's more than 40 people. It's not a small amount. Green Tea Fong sighed and typed, actually it's less than 10,000. How about we fork out money and find a better hotel? Lady Chow immediately replied, I think that's fine. I'll fork out 50,000. Let's find a 5-star hotel. The kind that costs 2,000 per person. To the three of them, 50,000 was only a month's salary. They were all people who could afford it. However, Little Temptress suggested, we need to make this clear to Nyenji in advance. Otherwise, it'll hurt her pride. Lady Chow and Little Temptress unanimously recommended Green Tea Fong to discuss the hotel with Gun Yenji. Green Tea Fong was the best at talking. Green Tea Fong was worried that Gun Yenji had already booked a hotel, so she called her immediately and said tactfully, "Yenji, I know a pretty good 5-star hotel. Me, Little Temptress, and Lady Chow happen to have business dealings with this hotel. They can give us a 20% discount and charge our company. How about we pay for this meal?" Gun Yenji immediately understood what Green Tea Fong meant. She quickly smiled and said, "Green Tea Fong, please don't. It's not that I don't have money. I just need to treat at that hotel. I can't tell you the reason yet, but you'll know when you get there. Must we treat at that shabby hotel?" Green Tea Fong raised an eyebrow. "Looks like there's a big show waiting for us. Genius 1 second remember website address. Mobile version. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.